that's what I took away from this game in the end, was that what they show here is the disaster that comes from not doing those things I'm talking about. These people, they double down all the time. Yep. They never let anything go. They take themselves way too seriously, and these things are what continue to stoke the flames of this war and why it never ends. Welcome back to the State of the Ark podcast. My name is Mike.
My name's Kason.
We're joined again by Ivan. How are you today?
Doing great. See you guys.
All right. So we're going to be covering Chapter 4 of, we're doing the neutral route on our first run. Right. But Chapter 4 is, by and large, the same, no matter which route you pick.
Yeah,
there
that's
will
what I
be
hear.
Different characters to recruit, some different side quests that are available in one and not the other. But the main story thread is, by and large, the same in Chapter 4.
Right.
So, what we're going to be doing next week, just so people are aware right off the bat, is covering all of the differences in the Chaos route, which is mostly just Chapter 3.
Yeah.
And the ending will be slightly different, just like a very small post-credits change.
Okay.
That's for next week, and then after that, we'll get into the law route. What were you going to say there, Ivan?
I think the ending you might get, if you get the good ending, it's all well and good. Because I'm not going to give you directions on what to do to get it. But just go into that scene without it. If you get the good outcome, good for you. Like, that's
sweet.
The chance is so small that it might not be worth it just to go for it. You know, it's one scene that's different. So.
Sure.
Oh, really? I got you.
I see what you're saying. So maybe not worry too much. Yeah.
So I'm not telling you how to do it. So there's a chance you might not get it this time. You know.
Okay.
Sure. Okay.
Gotcha.
So let's go over a little bit of what Kashua talks about as we start the chapter here. The title of this chapter, Chapter 4, is "Let Us Cling Together."
Yes, cling together.
Which was, like we said last time, the title of the PSP release of this game, the subtitle of it.
Yeah. And in Japanese, it's more something along the lines of just like holding hands.
Yep.
But did we cover the
hand in
night?
hand.
Oh, hand in hand? Okay, in Japanese, yeah, that's close enough. But to cling together is almost like you don't have a choice, right? Like to cling to somebody or to something.
You really
is
need...
like you're in a desperate spot.
Yeah, right.
Right. So I kind of like the context there, or not the context, but the connotation.
So the Bakram reeled as rumor after rumor flooded in following the fall of the castle. The leader of the enemy, a youth scarce old enough to shave, their own Abuna Branton, a man unworthy of their trust. The Dark Knights routed in the field of battle. So Denham has essentially taken over as the commander of the Walister. But above all else, the news that King Dorgalawa's daughter still lived. In their desperation, the people wept. They yearned for a righteous leader, a savior to bring them prosperity. This is going to be key context for the conversation between the Lancelots.
It was a good conversation.
Yeah, they yearned for a righteous leader, a savior to bring them prosperity. I take very strong note of that particular line.
Yep, very nice.
The Lady Kachua was the answer to their prayers. Lancelot Tartaros, mouthpiece of the Holy Lodician Empire, recognized Kachua as the rightful heir to the Valerian throne. The quarrel over succession was officially laid to rest. By Lancelot's accounting, the prior unrest, as he named it, stemmed not from a deep-rooted divide between clans, but instead from the misdeeds of a handful of power-hungry men. The history books would speak of no great Valerian war, yet only the landed and the nobility paid any service to Lancelot's tale. For those who resented the ascendancy of the Bakram, words made a poor salve. So the Walister aren't going to accept her as queen. The wounds they suffered would not heal without further bloodshed. So it was that while the lie of the battlefield changed, the war raged on. What had once been seen as a clash of clans became a rift between the rulers and the ruled, a struggle to break free from the yoke of oppression. So, That's where we find ourselves.
Narrated by Kachua,
Yes.
of course. Just
Which
got to keep pointing that out.
is interesting.
It is. 'Cause
considering
she's
the
all
ending
third
we got.
person here. She's like, Kachua then became the princess of
Yeah.
the world. Like, okay, you're Kachua. So very interesting that she's saying it that way.
I don't know if it's just supposed to be, it's just the voice actress doing a narrator, or if that's supposed to be
Right.
Kachua narrating. Do you have any insight on that, Ivan?
On the PSP version, the narrator was different. It was a male, at least for the
really?
opening narration. I don't remember if they had voice acting for the narrations in between, because the game didn't have voice acting in general, but
Right.
it did for the narration.
Well, that's actually a good point you bring up, because it's entirely possible. I mean, we've all played Chapter 4 now, everyone, right? It's entirely possible that she is not around
Yeah, right.
pretty soon.
Right.
And so the fact that she's speaking past tense as though this is in a history book somewhere is kind of interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Not sure what the intention is there, but it is her voice doing the narrations.
Well, that in my book, that just says that canon is
Well, that's true, though.
right.
There is a canon ending for the game.
There you go.
So
and they're approaching it from that perspective.
probably. Okay, let's talk about this scene between the Lancelots here. So we find out that Lancelot Hamilton, the Holy Knight of Zenobia,
Yeah.
is chained here in the dungeons of Heim Castle. Obviously, he was captured in that battle at Rhime,
Yeah.
brought here. He's not in good shape at all. Looks like he's been tortured or is continuing to be tortured.
Yeah. And you can hear voices from outside
Yes.
of people clamoring, and it almost sounds like there's an uprising happening, like
Yeah.
right now
Yes.
at the Dark Knight's location.
They are struggling to bring the order to the chaos, which is what they
Yes.
claim they're there to do.
Yes, exactly.
It's not going according to plan.
Yes, but as most foreign interventionists, like if things go wrong, it's not that big a deal to them. Right? Like, oh, I can always go back to Lotus. You know, like, oh, shoot, I screwed up. Whatever, no big deal, right? Sucks for the people of Valeria, but
Yeah. But there is a little bit of philosophy these Lancelots
Oh,
debate
yes.
between each other about
Oh,
the
yes.
nature of people, I
Yes.
guess, of the common man, right?
And One-Eyed Lance is very Nietzschean. He is. It's basically just Nietzsche. He's just spouting Nietzsche right now. It's wonderful.
Yeah. So let's just read some of this dialogue because it's great.
Yep.
Lancelot Hamilton. Let me guess, unable to stem the tide that rises from the hamlets and villages, because he's hearing the commotion
Yeah.
from outside, right? Dark Knight Lancelot. Perhaps we asked too much of the Bakram's soldiers. They're not the soldiers we are, you know, or the men. I like that
Yeah,
last line.
or the
It's kind of
men.
like takes a stab at these islanders. As
Yeah.
they're not on our level as people, not just as soldiers.
But what's funny is what he's doing here, because as you keep reading, just take note of this. He is not taking accountability for what happened here.
Oh no.
And he is blaming it on the external situation around him.
Yep.
Okay, now continue to read what he says about these Valerians.
Yep. Okay. So Hamilton, Lancelot, always binding people to your will, fettering them, lest they show signs of free thought. Perhaps therein lies your problem. Dark Knight, Lancelot, they ask for a stern hand to rule them. Hamilton, Lancelot, they ask, you're mad. Dark Knight, you have it wrong. It is the world that is mad. Tell me, how many of these peasants would even lift a hand to better their lot were they given a chance? How many would bloody their hands, risk their necks, walk without leaning upon another? Hamilton, Lancelot's quiet. Back to Dark Knight, Lancelot. Think back to your own uprising. So this is the reference to Ogre battle,
Yeah,
the
to Lotus
uprising
and-
of that first game.
what
right?
happened before.
Think back to your own uprising. Where were the people for whom you shed blood, safe at their hearths, grousing that more was not done for them?
Right.
Hamilton, Lancelot. Times were hard. They had to do. They had all they could. It was all they could do to keep themselves fed, more or less. I think they copied the line incorrectly. Dark Knight, Lancelot. Nonsense. They chose to be victims. They think that only from without the castle walls may one voice discontent, not realizing that the quickest way to the throne is a knife in the king's ribs. Hamilton. These people have the right to live out their own lives, not some part in a play of your design. Dark Knight. You have both your eyes, and yet you see less clearly than I do. True freedom is not granted from above, it is won from below. And yet the commons look without for a savior, even as they claim sovereignty over their own fate. They wait and they wait for this savior, never taking that first step towards saving themselves.
They want it both ways, you
Yes.
could say.
Yes.
They want someone to save them, and they want to have no responsibility whatsoever and to have no burden or demands on them in any way, shape, or form. No responsibility, but all of the benefits of being saved. Yeah.
Right. Hamilton doesn't see it that way. Man is not so slothful a creature as that. They merely lack our strength.
Right.
Dark Knight. You are too pure of heart, Holy Knight. The people have no need of dreams. We give them all they need. And what is it? And what is that, pray tell? A strong, unwavering ruler. You are mad. And then this is a good one from Dark Knight. All men are born with a terrible burden upon their hearts, this insatiable yearning for pleasure. They do not hesitate to take the lives of others if it will better their own. And yet even these base creatures can know guilt. So what do? They turn it round. This is not my fault, man says. The world has failed me. Someone must bring order to this chaos. If the commons want to pursue their pleasure, let them do it in our service, under our rule.
That's kind of what I wanted to point out when he's blaming the circumstances.
Yes.
Instead of maybe himself. He's here at this place. He's like, oh man, these guys, they suck. Oh, this would have gone so great if it weren't for these people. But then he's kind of turning that same blame onto everybody else, being like, hey, you guys don't take any responsibility and you don't really care and you just blame external sources. But he kind of does the same thing too.
Yep.
He's not without blame in this.
Nope.
I don't think he sees it. I think he's oblivious to that fact.
Yeah.
But, it kind of goes both ways.
And this is kind of one thing I liked a lot about Chapter 4 was nothing goes according to basically anyone's plan. Like there's
Yeah,
no
that's true.
side of
That's a
this
good
war, whether it's Walister, Galgaston, Bakram, Liberation Front, Dark Knights,
Or
Branton.
Zenobia, yeah.
It goes
Yeah.
nobody's way.
You're
in the
right.
end.
So there's not like an evil mastermind of the whole thing.
No.
That's just human nature. We are our own worst enemies.
Yes. And it just, the
That's good.
whole thing becomes a mess.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way, at least that I view wars. Like you think you have these intentions, you're going in here for this reason, you're doing this, but it always gets so muddy and everyone suffers. Everyone, and most especially the people.
Yep.
That's something that they point out in some dialogue a little bit later too. And by the time we get to the ending, especially the ending we were going for this run, like you see Denham sort of reflecting on all of this.
Yes. Yeah.
And like, was any of this really worth it?
Right. What difference did it make? Or if it did make a difference, was that better or not? And even if it is better or isn't better, was it the right thing to do either way? Or would somebody else have been better at this than him?
Yeah. Probably not. But like that's the thing. Like it's this is why it's so difficult, I think. It's so complex. When you're dealing with these conflicts between whether it's ethnic conflicts, whether whatever it is, everybody suffers legitimate, like terrible, traumatic losses.
Right.
That give them a place to legitimately say, like, I was wronged here.
Everyone
what
can do
they
that.
did to
It's
me,
true.
I deserve either vengeance or I'm honor bound to seek it.
Yeah.
This it's not okay. I can't let this go.
Yeah.
Everybody is going to feel that way. And everybody will have a right to feel that way.
Depending on how you define the word rights. Yeah, it's true.
Well,
it's true.
I guess what I mean, they'll have a place of where they could legitimately feel that they are, that they were victims or that they were wronged in some way.
Yeah.
And this is actually something, because we're doing actually right now as the exclusive live streams on Patreon.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings, which will be
Yeah.
released publicly in a few months.
Yeah.
But there was a line that really stuck out to me in the novel that I hadn't picked up on before in the past. And I'll go into this more there. And I can't quote it because I wasn't thinking I was going to bring it up in this conversation necessarily.
Well, I just finished the book a few days ago, so.
Yeah, it's when Gimli is speaking in Lothlorien with the Lady Galadriel. Right. And it says something like, he felt as if he was looking into the eyes of an enemy and felt compassion. And it totally changes his entire demeanor.
It's true. Gimli is very different post Lothlorien than he was before that point.
That was the moment where like he and Legolas would sort of banter back and forth about the problems between elves and dwarves, and well, it wasn't the dwarves' fault that this happened. And Aragorn kept being like, "Shut up! Like this is not important right now. We're on the same team here."
But Galadriel disarms him.
Yes,
she completely disarms him by looking at him.
Yeah. Anyway, elsewhere. I will go further into what I took away from that reading it, but I get this strong sense that the only real solution, and what I mean by real solution, I'm not saying that I expect this to happen, that this is by any means like even a helpful thing really to say, other than it's just a thing I believe to be true because I know it won't happen in reality. But that there is what I consider the only path to conflict resolution. And maybe we can apply this, maybe not to the large scale, but to the smaller scale, to the people that you know and interact with, your family members, your community members, your friends, whatnot. Since we can't have any impact on the larger conflicts of the world. But there was a study, man, I was really not thinking I was going to bring this up, or else I would have had it on hand. There's a study I read several years ago, or at least read the summary of several years ago. It was talking about the way people react to conflicting facts to what they believe. Right. So they have an ideology, they believe this, and they were presented with facts that conflict their beliefs about the world or whatever. And they had two groups. And one group, they just had them sit down and they just provided these facts. And there was a high rate of rejection of those facts. That can't be right.
Right.
I don't believe that. Right. The other group was brought in and allowed first. They were asked questions and they were allowed to elaborate on what they believe and why. So it was the intention of that was to allow them to feel like what they had to say was valuable. They wanted to hear what they thought.
Yeah.
They let them say that first, then they presented the conflicting facts. And the rate at which they accepted those facts was a lot higher.
A lot higher. Part of that is when you get people to articulate their own position, it's one thing to keep it in your mind and to just know, oh, this is what I think, right? But you keep it. As soon as you try to put it into words, or as soon as you try to explain it to somebody else, I feel like you're almost you're exposing your own weaknesses in a way that I think even you would know it, essentially, when you just talk about it. And also getting people in the mood of talking, it puts you in a position where you're just I don't know, you're more willing to accept something when you've taken a moment to look at somebody and talk to them first.
Yes.
As opposed to just yes, no, yes, no, yes, no.
Yes. And what is tying these two things together for me, the moment from Lord of the Rings with Gimli and Lady Galadriel and this study, is the fact that you're in the face of someone you consider an enemy. Right. You become disarmed when they actually genuinely listen to you.
Sure.
Or they give you the impression they want to know what you think. They value what you think or what you have to say. When somebody offers that or extends that first to you, there's almost an obligation to do the same.
Yes,
right?
I know. You
Like-
feel immense pressure to do that back.
Yeah.
It's true.
And so
And remember, too, that Gimli was forcibly blindfolded and was like, oh, you're the only
Yes.
one. Dwarfs aren't allowed here. And
Yes.
up until that point, Gimli was not well treated by the elves.
Right.
Except for when a messenger was like, oh, okay, Galadriel will see you now. And then they unblindfolded everyone. But he was not well treated. And in that moment, he had many complaints.
yes.
But he was disarmed immediately.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not perfect. Nobody is perfect as a resolver of conflicts. But I've been in some chaotic sort of like situations in terms of like family dynamics and things like that, where
Okay.
there's a lot of conflict and these people are really mad at each other. And I've done a lot of observing where I get along just fine with these people. Either one, like
Individually.
one-on-one with me.
Yeah.
But when they're together, they just cannot seem to. And my observation is almost always they are not doing this principle. They are not giving the other person the impression that they care or want to understand them.
Right.
And so I think what I'm taking away from all of these things that I'm reading and the game we're playing right now is all of the people in this game, they don't care. They never care. They never give even like the slightest, they don't extend any level, at any level, an olive branch to their enemies. I guess you could say
Sometimes Denim does.
Denim, not even though, because he'll just say, lay down your arms and surrender and you guys can live.
I love there's a part towards the end of this game where one of the soldiers is like, don't even say that anymore.
Yeah,
you
just
know
stop
we're not going to do
saying
it.
It's stupid,
It's
right?
stupid. Yeah.
But this is how it escalates, whether we're talking about the larger sort of world conflict level or on the individual level. I think, and this comes a lot from even just observing arguments online or whatever, there is a really just a lack of both parties because they view this person as an enemy to me.
Yeah, you're a bad guy. Yeah.
And if we could just stand back for a second and make an attempt to understand somebody in good faith, I think you will find that disarms people and that it'll really change your ability to make headway and find places of compromise or places where you even agree and realize you might even agree a lot more than you think that you do.
Right. Of
That
course.
you might have some different ideas about how to get to a same ends or whatever.
You know, the other people in discussions, you only bring up what's important, right? You don't just talk about the mundane little details, right?
Yeah.
You bring up stuff that you deem is important, and this is something that happens in terms of like the way that the media will talk about certain things. You only talk about the differences. They only hear about the differences.
Yeah.
Because, well, who cares about the similarities? I don't want to just like hear all the things I already agree with. Like, give me something that you don't agree with me on. All right, now let's talk. Now we can have a conversation. And I think humans are like that. Even I'm like that in a lot of ways. And of course, the media likes to feed us that more contentious content as opposed to the more sympathetic content in terms of the us versus them narratives. But there is something in me that I do get kind of bored when I'm just hearing agreements and, oh yeah, that's cool. And and this is just part of my personality because I do like to argue a little bit. I do, all of a sudden my ears perk up and my brain kind of focuses. And as soon as I hear something I disagree with, I'm just like, okay, all right, all the things I can say, okay, cool, this is getting interesting, right?
Yeah,
and it's probably more of a fault with me. But that is something I think a lot of people are like that.
I think you even mentioned this in the last video, and this is kind of where I wanted to end on this point, but there is, I really do believe, a part of human nature that sort of drives that.
Yeah.
And that sort of like focuses its attention more on the things that might be threatening.
That are different. Yeah.
Or that are different.
Yeah.
And so it's not just a matter of me stating what I think is, how we ought to approach resolving conflict. Like, I can say that all I want.
Yeah.
It doesn't take away a lot of our human nature. It's
Right.
more and it's more about learning or making attempts to overcome your human nature. And I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying by any means that I'm perfect at this. I've had many conflicts in my life that did not end well, and I was not very humble in those, and I sought my vengeance or whatever it might be, right?
Yeah, me too.
So I'm not saying that it's easy. I'm just saying that I think it's the only real way for a conflict to end, because otherwise you get these cycles that just go on and on and on through generations afterwards. And it never ends.
Right.
And that's what I love so much about the route that we took and kind of where it went. And the ending that we got was that was more or less what you see with Denham in like the final scenes as he's reflecting back on everything. It was just like there was all this effort, and we have to keep fighting and continuing to motivate these soldiers, and we have to keep going. We have to do it for peace, for peace, for peace, for peace. And
he keeps saying this too, all throughout this chapter. Like, okay, let us draw our swords one last time, and then we will have peace.
Right.
How many times do you have to say that
Yes.
before you stop believing it?
Yes.
And I don't know. People always believe it.
Yes.
This was the last time, right? Somebody's trying to quit smoking. This will be the last cigarette. You know, it's like, no, you've told yourself that 100 times.
Yeah.
That's not you. But people continue to believe that that's the case.
Yeah. And so, I don't know. I just think what I'm taking away from this, I'm not telling other people what they should take away from it. What I'm taking away from it in my own life is that I'm going to make a greater effort, I think, to do that, even more so than I've ever done before.
Well,
if there's
one good way to do it is to learn another language.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That just opens up so many different ways of learning about and communicating with people that are different.
Yeah.
That's been a big thing, at least in my life, with this kind of thing, is learning different languages, especially places like Japan or like Arabic or even Spanish, which is closer.
Yeah.
Like it puts you in touch with a whole different culture that you never would have experienced otherwise.
Yeah.
And I know you've been learning Portuguese lately.
Yep.
I'm sure. Yeah.
And
I've done
a lot of traveling for work.
Oh,
and
that's
I've
true.
seen,
That's true.
Different cultures in different countries, and it has gone further than any other experience in my life.
Travel.
Of opening my eyes to the fact that, like, particularly in this country, I think there's almost an inevitable sort of sentiment as you grow up learning, like, this is the quote unquote greatest country on earth, and and like, our lives are, people want to immigrate here, and like, this is the place. Right. And the more traveling I've done, the less I believe that that's even remotely true. I think there are so many places in the world that are just as good a place to live if you shift your mindset to the way that culture believes.
Yeah.
And you realize our way of life is by no means some sort of like, what would you call it? Like a higher or a better way.
Yeah.
It's just a different way that sprang from a different culture, right?
That being said, it is a fact that net immigration in America versus people leaving is very
and it's also not to say, that there aren't places that are very, very difficult to live and people want
really
to escape
want
from.
to leave. Yeah.
But all I'm saying is that this mindset that we've got it best here,
right,
is what I've been erasing. Even though I didn't consciously really think I believed that.
Sure.
I think there was always this idea that, oh yeah, like, this is the best country to live in.
Right.
And it's just clearly, there's no such thing as that, is my point. There are so many different ways to approach life, so many different ways to view, to live, to celebrate, to whatever.
Yeah.
And there are so many beautiful, beautiful approaches that have sprang up from different cultures that my eyes have been opened up to. And I think that doing that, it accomplishes similarly what you're talking about with learning other languages.
Yeah.
You have to get out of your bubble and your echo chamber and step into another one that you're not comfortable or familiar with. Right. And that will be scary at first. I don't know if I'm saying this right. Oh, it's uncomfortable. Oh, they might make fun of me.
They're going to make fun of me. And they might.
They might. But, like, that's okay. What you're going to realize in that is this is just as valid
Right.
a way to do it.
And if you're willing to laugh at yourself too, then if they laugh at you because you said something dumb, if you don't get too offended, if you don't let it bother you that much, it can actually be a fun thing. Like, you're both laughing now. Like, because of something you said, both of you are laughing. And it might be a little bit at your expense, but don't, like, just kick out the ego.
Yes.
And just let it go. Make it a learning experience and turn this laughter, don't make it into, frowns. Like, don't turn the world upside down. Keep the smiley face.
I think I swear this is the end, because this is a long tangent kind of off of the game itself, but not taking yourself seriously was kind of what I took from our Nier Automata playthrough.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
From like all the philosophy we looked at in that. What spoke the strongest to me in that was you can't take yourself so seriously. And I think it's the combination of, one, ingraining yourself within this niche or culture or tribe or whatever it is, and never stepping outside of it.
Right.
And then in addition to that, taking yourself way more seriously than you should is disastrous in terms of just fanning the flames of conflict.
Right.
And if you want to be able to quell those, you need to step away from both of those things. First of all, learn how to laugh at yourself. You're not right about everything, and you really should try not to take yourself so seriously. You don't got it figured out the way you think you do.
Was that Pascal? Was that a Pascal quote? Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then secondly,
so
really step outside of that group, that in-group you're in.
Yeah.
And with an open mind, with good faith, like approach another one, even one that you might think is an enemy to you or scary or whatever, and just really try to understand where they're coming from. And I think that in and of itself would just like, anyway, I'm rambling at this point.
Got it.
But that's what I took away from this game in the end, was that what they show here is the disaster that comes from not doing those things I'm talking about. These people, they double down all the time. Yeah. They never let anything go. They take themselves way too seriously, and these things are what continue to stoke the flames of this war and why it never ends, right?
Yeah.
So I really liked how he kind of got to that destination as the final scene, where Denim sort of like sits there and reflects on some of his memories of what's happened, and you do all the loss. And I guess circling all the way back to the original point, nothing goes according to plan for anybody involved in this conflict. Even Lancelot loses. Both Zenobian Lancelot and Tartarus Lancelot lose in the end. Branton loses in the end. Denim wins but loses everything in the end. Vice loses in the end. Like, everybody loses.
Right.
And that's more or less the destination if you cannot do these two things I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You will lose everything at some point.
It's another good line here. He says, people are drawn towards power and safety. They will betray their most beloved to obtain it. Kachua, come.
Yep.
So that line was directly towards Kachua, basically. Yep. He's pointing out to her, like, look, she betrayed you just for peace and safety. You don't stand a chance, right? Yeah. People will do anything for safety and power.
Yeah.
Right? And for a powerful leader and for their lives to be safe.
I was surprised at how openly to her he basically just tells her, we're using you.
Yeah.
And she's going along with, maybe not going along with it in the sense that she's okay with it, but like realizing she can't do anything about it. Because she talks about this with Denim later, like, oh, you want to use me just like the Dark Knights did.
Yeah.
But
at least I'm needed here. You didn't need me.
Yeah, he doesn't even pretend that he's not doing that. He calls it out straight to her face.
Yeah. Oh, she respects that, you know?
Yeah.
Because she felt that Denim was feigning this love, but his actions said otherwise. Whereas at least this guy's honest, you know, I'll stay with this one-eyed Lance Joker.
Yeah.
Oh, it was also revealed. Was it here that this was revealed? That one-eyed Lance lost his eye to Lance Hamilton, Holy Knight Lance?
Yes.
That's revealed here.
Yeah, that's very interesting because that just kind of came out of nowhere, and it's crazy to see. Wow, One-Eyed Lance has actually taken this pretty well, all things considered.
Yeah.
Like he hasn't just killed the guy. Now, maybe killing him would have been a mercy on what ends up becoming of Holy Knight Lancelot. Yeah, because his fate is one could say his fate is worse than death, and that might have been why One-Eyed Lance was doing this, right? But my initial thought was, wow, you're having a pretty normal conversation with the guy that took your eye. Eyes are important, that's.
Well, this is his vengeance on him for doing that.
Yeah, like, and it was really only as I was talking that I realized, oh, this is it. This is why.
Yeah,
it's all part of his getting back. This is part of it.
Yeah. We've said a lot here, and we haven't passed it to you, Ivan. You have anything you want to say about this scene or anything before we move on?
This is just an iconic scene. I think this is you get a really good look into what is motivating the Dark Knights.
Yeah.
And the idealism of Zenobia right now.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And so I love how Matsuno fleshes out his antagonists' philosophies.
Yeah, really good.
He does.
That's
almost like how do you know what's kind of weird? Well, what do you think of this? It's almost as if Matsuno, if someone has a fleshed out philosophy, they are a bad guy. That the good guys are always the ones who don't, they're just kind of doing what their intuition tells them. They don't have a fully fleshed out philosophy. Like, does that sound accurate here?
I think you're onto something. I think it's more like they haven't thought about it as deeply as the antagonists have.
There might be some subtext there where it's like those who think too much on philosophy become an obstacle to themselves, to their own soul.
Ivan, I know you're itching to say something there. Go for it.
This is I'd like to compare this to Hideo Kojima's villains, because this is something that I feel like him and Matsuno have in common, where sometimes by the end of the game you actually are kind of cheering for the bad guy. Like,
well, sometimes they make sense. Yep. But the more I think about it, this is Lord of the Rings, so like Frodo doesn't have like a super killer philosophy on the goings on of the world, whereas Saruman totally does, and Sauron, I mean, I guess he does too, but you don't really get to know that as much. But Saruman's all waxing super philosophical, and then you think about like Harry Potter too. Right? Like freaking Harry Potter doesn't know jack about philosophy. He's just like doing what he thinks is right. And then there's this philosopher who's just, you don't understand the metaphysics of reality. And then he's just like, whatever, dude. So what?
Roth, the shonen protagonist versus the shonen anime villain. It's always like a guy who's just like, I believe in friendship.
Well, I'm thinking maybe this isn't, friendship. Maybe this isn't Matsuno. Maybe I think we're just hitting onto an archetype here, just in general.
Yeah.
Be careful those who study philosophy, be careful that you do not become a villain. Yeah. And I almost see it, and the more I think about it, the more I'm like, that kind of makes sense. Like smart people, through philosophy, they can talk themselves into accepting all kinds of strange things and believing, or kind of like Naibeth. Like it's like. Yep. You kind of overthink it, and before you know it, you're the good guy, and you're murdering people by the thousands, and you're like, I'm the good guy. And kind of Denham's doing it too a little bit, but he's less justifying it. Naibeth is all the way down that deep philosophy hole of, actually, this is a good thing, and, according to the philosophers of Church. So
let's
it's interesting.
Pin in Naibeth to make sure we get back to him, because his story gets tied up later on with
good, but I did not see him in this playthrough again.
I know. Yes. I want to bring it up because
good.
Probably involved in the future. So
perfect.
A little bit later on in the chapter.
I feel like there's something there. There's something about. Well, okay, it probably goes back to what you were saying with that Pascal quote about don't take it so seriously. So even if you have this killer philosophy and you're like, I'm super deep into whoever it is, I don't want to name anyone because that might be you, but it might be you. First of all. Second of all, don't take it too seriously. When you take your personal musings on and philosophizing so seriously, you're kind of just worshiping yourself a little bit. It's
that is.
I like what Naibeth said, following my own light. You create this feedback loop that amplifies monstrosities, really.
Yes.
And don't take yourself so seriously. I think it all comes back to that.
Yeah.
I just recently went through that fight again in the neutral route where he says that, and I realized how much that sounds like a Reddit atheist meme where I'm in the
yes, I know. It's typical. Yeah. What is it though? What's the meme?
It was like word for word, except prettier.
Wait, say that again?
It's an old meme from way back when. It was like
I want to look it
picture
up.
of a nerdy guy in a fedora. And he goes, I don't need any phony God's blessing. I'm enlightened by my own intelligence. You know,
I love that.
thing to say. That was neither of a thing.
I tell you what, that is zero self-awareness right there.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on something, and I've seen it. I've seen it a lot just in my own sort of temperament or my own feelings towards my fellow man or people around me or the human race, whatever you want to call it, humankind. I have been, particularly in recent years, like super frustrated with the way that I see people treating each other.
Yeah.
The way that they argue, like all these things. And I feel like the more seriously I take all of it, like the worse my feelings are towards people, the more I want to see them suffer or like things like that.
Sure,
like secretly or whatever.
Yeah.
Which is why it was so important and why I loved Yoko Taro's sort of like latching onto in Nier Automata that idea of stop taking he never takes himself seriously.
No, right? Actually, I think you brought that up during the playthrough too. Like to a high degree, he is very not serious.
Yeah.
And
I think that's the key to being able to like step back from all of this stuff and realize maybe I'm because like I'm saying, you're not right about everything. You think you've got it figured out because this is the only perspective you know about. You're trapped in this little prism here of your own brain.
Right.
I don't feel what they feel, but I think I know it because I'm interpreting and reading between the lines and doing all this. But you don't really know as much as you think you know. And so if you start taking your own interpretation of reality so seriously, I think a lot of times that will lead to a place where it starts to go a dark direction. If you can laugh at it, look at it for what it really is, well, who knows what it really is? That's the point, though. Nobody knows what it really is, so you can't take your interpretation of it so seriously.
Yeah.
It's a little bit easier to let things go and not get so, pissed off. But
love it. We should probably move on, but I love that. I thought that was great. Then the very next scene is Kachua and her feeling that Denim betrayed her first.
Yes.
And okay, I can't remember if it was Lance that said this to her or not, but basically she was saying like, I feel no connection to him. He betrayed me first, and
he's not
we're done.
My family.
Yeah, we're not blood.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
There we go, and then Let Us Cling Together, Chapter 4.
Phydock Castle.
We're hearing Shadow's report, right?
Yes.
Shadow sounds like a beast. I want to know more about that guy. Because it's just like, oh, well, these people said this or that. I got a scullery made to admit this, but I couldn't find the actual location.
Yeah.
And it's just like, whoa. Like, because as he was talking, I was like, oh, hearsay. Oh, I got a scullery made. Okay, you found... No, he infiltrated the whole palace, right?
Yeah, right.
He was, like, in deep, but he just couldn't figure out the exact dungeon where the people were being hidden.
Couldn't get close enough.
And he comes back, and he's just like this super... like clandestine covert
a beast
dude.
of a spy.
Is a beast, total beast, total beast, and we don't really learn much more about him. But
he tells Denham where he believes Lancelot Hamilton is being kept. Just informing him about things. You go a little bit further into the conversation here. Shouldn't we move our forces on Heim?
Right.
He's saying not yet, like that's rash. We don't really know what they're scheming. We're still trying to... Denham is advising that they be careful about their next step. They don't want to, step into a trap. Or,
right.
There's a lot of moving pieces to this a lot of things that could go wrong.
Yeah.
So he says, the attendant says, but the more time that passes before we strike, the weaker we become. Have you forgotten the way that men speak of the princess? Soldiers in our own ranks weep aloud at the thought of lifting sword against Dorgalia's blood.
Dorgalia,
And so Dem's like, I know, all the more reason not to act in haste. Like, we cannot make the wrong move here. This is really precarious situation we're in. So then another report comes in. Soldiers at Brigantis have taken hostages and holed up inside the castle. What are their demands? Our surrender to the Bakram, sir.
Of course.
After all the fighting we've been through, not likely, like, no way we're going to stop now. So he says, Denham says, not a situation we are like to change. And he stops himself. The princess's arrival was for many the advent of a savior. People were looking for a savior.
Yes.
This is exactly what Lancelot was talking about. They want a savior, right? Add to this the fact that the late Dynast king was a fervent follower of Philhaha. How natural for these new converts to rekindle his cry for accord and seek to abandon his fight. So this is where you get a choice, right? This is the choice you were telling us about last time, Ivan, where you can either storm this castle or go in
and
unarmed.
in future playthroughs, you don't have to do this battle. I just wanted to make sure you guys got the ending that we were going for.
Right.
Perfect. Doing this makes you very unpopular for very obvious reasons. The thing to do is take all the weapons off of Denham, put him alone in the party, and go in through the front door, and they'll let you in.
Yeah. And I guess maybe we can save this because we've already kind of talked about a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
What happens when you go in unarmed, I think we can save for our discussion next week on the differences of chaos. But yeah, it's my favorite scene from the game so far takes place when you do that, when you don't fight and you go in unarmed. So, but we're going to skip that and move on to the next thing. So we've got to go past Brigantis. Are we missing anything? Let me know, Ivan, if there's something you want to
on the way to Brigantis, you're waylaid by some Galgastani remnants. It's a pretty nothing fight, but that does happen. And then you go into Brigantis and you meet Olivia.
Yes.
Olivia
is another daughter, or another sister, I should say, of Saria and Sistina.
Yeah, there's three. Sherry?
Sherry's the fourth. So there's four daughters.
Yeah.
Of who's the Abuna's name? Is like Manuva or something like that? Maruva.
That's it, yeah.
All four of these women are the daughter of Maruva, who was, if I'm not mistaken, like the high priest of the Order of Philhaha, right?
Yeah, he was displaced by... Well, he was in the running to be there, and him and Branton were rivals.
Branton won out.
And Branton won.
Yeah.
Okay. So Branton ended up ascending, but Maruva was in the running for that same seat. So, let's see here. I'm trying to find... Okay, you might have to help me through this because the script I'm reading has all these different ways in which this conversation goes depending on the choice you made. So, what comes out of going here, right, is that we got to go seek out Maruva. Like, where did he go?
There's a lot of things that happen in these scenes. When you run into Olivia, she takes you to see Prancet because turns out he's alive and he's there in the castle.
And he's coughing and dying.
And he's dying. He was thrown into a cave that they throw like political prisoners into to just die. So he's dying.
What do they call it? It's a plague infested.
Like Golgotha.
Yes, totally.
Yeah, so he came down with, I don't know, what would be the equivalent of something like, what is that biblical disease everyone was afraid of?
Leprosy. That's the one.
Something like that.
Leprosy, Denham would not be in that room that close.
Well, sure, but the idea is that they take these people with this plague and they like put them into different
into a place,
different like colonies of where only the afflicted are at, right? And they like get them out of their society,
like in Ben-Hur.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, they found him in one of these places, right? And they sort of like brought him here, and they've been trying to help him, but he's like dying. And so they can't save him. He's basically on his deathbed as Denham goes and approaches him. And this is where we learn a lot of information, a lot of things, pieces kind of start coming together here. So he is the brother, Prancet is the brother of Branton. Right. They were both Abunas, or priests. And essentially, the handmaiden or servant of the former queen of Dorgalua had an affair with the king.
Yes, and this was Manaflora.
Yes, Manaflora, right. She is Cashua's mother. So she was impregnated, and she was asking the queen, is it all right if I have some time to leave? And she's like, you don't think I know, like, what happened? Like, no, you're going to be my slave forever because of this.
Right.
But then she realizes she has a child.
Right, which I thought she knew from the beginning, because it was like, oh, you're trying to get time to leave because you don't want anyone to know that you got pregnant.
Right.
But instead, I don't know what she was thinking. I thought it sounded like she already knew.
Like, just to escape,
I know why
just
you
to
want
run
to leave.
away and not be there,
Right.
not risk being discovered or whatever it might be, right? But yeah, she didn't know. So when she finds out, that's when it's like, okay, your child can't be anywhere near the throne. It's got to go somewhere else. Because she is also
she's
expecting.
pregnant too.
The queen is.
Yeah, I think they're a month
son.
apart. Yeah.
Yeah. And that son was going to be the next king, but both of them ended up dying too. This is what we learn later. This sent Dorgalia into like a madness or whatever.
Yep.
But anyway, Cashua was born. Abuna Prancet ends up taking the child to Branton and saying, what should we do?
Right.
This is essentially like the heir to the throne.
Yeah.
And Branton says more or less, well, it's probably not a good idea to like keep her here. You lost your own child who was named Cashua.
Yeah, right.
Why don't
Cashua
you take this child as your own and raise her?
Right.
So that's
and
when
the point was, hey, like there will be an end to this. Like you'll only raise her temporarily, so that later on we can use her politically, something like that.
Yeah.
But I think Abuna Prancet said something as like, when I heard the child call me father, I threw that out the window and decided I was just going to completely be this girl's father.
Yeah. So anyway, it's a really good scene, though. I think the pacing of the information here,
it was good.
The voice acting is great. The use of flashback, like, it's just really engaging. Like everything really like comes together here.
The theme is really like the music theme is very.
It's amazing, amazing. The music just in general in the game is so good. But I agree with what Ivan's saying. I think this was one of my favorite places in the game where the music was really supplementing kind of the story here in a way that just really makes it land really well. So it's fantastic. Prancet ends up dying there.
There's one other big reveal, though, and I believe it was here that this reveal happened. Denim is Bakram.
Yes, right.
And
it's right in the next scene where Olivia.
Oh, it's in the next scene. Okay,
yeah.
With Olivia. That's right. With Olivia.
There's she kind of like reminds Denim of a history he completely forgot of his early childhood.
Yeah, well, he kind of just projected that history onto him and Cachua and his new town.
Right.
And he thought, I kind of remember, and somebody helped me out, and I thought it was Cachua, though. And it's like, no, it was Olivia.
Yeah.
It was Saria. It was
Saria saved. Olivia was the one drowning, and Saria
because she
pulled
hurt
them
her
out.
head. That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, and he had associated Cachua being the one pulling.
Yeah,
them
that's
out
right.
So I just wanted to make that callback that it was Saria because of the way that she like doesn't seem to mind that Cecina's revealing information in front of her in chapter 2 when you meet her.
Because she knows
she
who
knew
Denim
Denim
is.
already and Cachua too.
Yeah.
Well, very good. Very interesting.
Yeah, exactly. So they had played together, as children. And he must have been very, very young because, obviously his memory of that is shaky. But as she explains it, he's like, yeah, you're right. Like, it actually was that way.
That builds his character a little bit, too, that even as a child, when he saw someone drowning, even though he could not swim, he went in to go rescue the person drowning. And he was 4 years old, maybe? I don't know how old you are at the point where it's like
10 years older than both of them, so
she would have been maybe a teenager. Yeah.
Well, but he wouldn't have. Yeah, she would have been. Yeah,
she would have been. Yeah.
But that just tells you a little bit about Denim as well. That he's the kind of person who is self-sacrificing in that way. Yeah. Even from childhood.
Yeah. Anyway, he does not want to believe this, and this kind of goes back into it as well. He identifies as Walister. Right. And it's like it's
this was hard for him to
identity shattering to be told you're not Walister, you're Bakram.
Right.
But I hate Bakram.
Yes.
I'm not on that team. I hate that team.
Yes. This can go one of two ways. You can go the like as most people are aware, Hitler was part Jewish.
Yeah.
Or Voldemort was part Muggle. I'm pretty sure that's like the whole connection there. But like you can go one of two ways. You can either find out that you are what you hate, which there's some archetypal way in which that's true for everyone anyways, right? Like search your own shadow and realize after not much time that a lot of the things you hate are like inside of your body. Like it's you, it's in your mind. And what do you do about that now? Do you like rebel against it and like do you still try to kill all the Bakram, or do you deny it, right? Do you deny that fact and then just live as you were before, or do you accept it and help it to make you into something more, hopefully something better? Depends on what it is.
And this just goes back to kind of our conversation earlier, which I won't touch on because we already did it to death, but stepping outside of that little bubble of your own tribe and realizing I have much more in common with them than I thought. Actually, we're all human beings. We're all doing our best. We all want to just live
you know what
the
is
happiest we
ironic,
can.
though?
Go for it.
Denham's clan changes from Walister to Bakram at the beginning of this chapter in the game as well. The fact that he is Bakram, whenever he kills a Bakram unit, it causes his reputation with the Bakram clan to go down. And so by being Bakram, he's actually becoming much less popular with Bakram throughout the rest of the chapter.
Oh, man.
It's true. It's an interesting way of working the mechanic of this into it, but from the battle side of things. But
that's right.
Anyway, he eventually does accept this.
He does,
And now Sistina, and I think Sistina comes in my game because Saria was dead in my run.
Oh, okay.
So Sistina comes in.
Saria is not recruitable in the neutral route here anyway, so she would not have come in.
Oh, right. Okay.
Oh, okay. Good to know.
Because you recruit her soon after this.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, because is she at Quadriga with the pirates or whatever?
Yeah, I can cover that scene if you guys didn't both do it. Because I know.
Okay, that would be good, actually.
Yeah, let's get to that in a second. But Sistina comes in, and they're both wondering where their father is. They don't know. And so the next goal is to try to... Well, I think she does eventually sort of... Oh, of course. It must be at a place called Ishtar or something like that.
You've actually
Ishtar
been there.
Ishtar is the goddess.
Yeah, some sort of shrine.
But there's a shrine to Ishtar in, Yeah.
So you got to go there and get him. That's sort of like the next move so that he can give you more information that we need and kind of become an advisor, essentially, to Denham throughout the rest of the game. Why don't you cover the Saria stuff right now? I think it's a good time to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, so Saria and, we're going to cover Sherry in a bit, but they're both recruitable at the same time in Chapter 4, which is after the Hagia Hamuba fight, after you go back to Fiduk, but before you go to Barnesha. You go to Chrysero, you'll get a note in the War Report about pirates at Quadriga, you go down to Quadriga, and there you will be drawn into a battle with what looks like pirates, being led by a priest, like a cleric class. And he basically says, you want to come fight pirates now? Or did you come here to ask us to join you? And then you get the option, well, okay, you can join us, or you can argue with them about, who the sea belongs to. And if you ask them to join, they'll have a bit more banter, like maybe, no, we'll fight you anyway. But then they give up and they say, okay, no, let's real talk. We're actually the rest of the Valeria Liberation Front, which we're all that's left of them, and here's Saria. And Saria will say, what does she say? Like, you were trying to be a hero before, but looks like now you've actually become one. So, since you're no longer a follower of the Duke, you've basically replaced him, she tags along.
Got it. Yeah, because that was her whole thing, was she wouldn't want to join us being someone who would have gone back
to Walister, or to the Duke.
to the Duke, right?
Yeah,
so now that he's gone, she's maybe cool with it at this point. There is a good scene with Warren back at Almorica. He's, healthy again. Denham basically goes and confronts him about what the Zenobians' actual purpose was there. Yeah. And he tries, even in the scene, to deny it.
Yes, yeah.
He's like, no, we were banished. He's like, okay, stop.
Yeah.
Why are you really here? And he finally admits that there was an heirloom of Zenobia, a sword, that was taken, and that he doesn't know exactly what the Dark Knights are planning to do with it, but that there's a legend that it's
It does
some sort of gateway to the gods,
sure,
or something like that.
It can. Oh, what is it? Your will. The gods lend their power to your will, right? So you can use the power of the gods. But also, the sword is called Brynhildr.
Yep.
Brynhildr. I actually like that name a lot.
It's dope.
Yeah, it sounds like
Nordic
Brynhildr.
mythology.
What?
Norse mythology. That is.
Yes, I think so. I believe it's one of the
gods. Yeah.
Nibelungen. Is it one of the Rhine maidens? There's Flusshilde.
Actually, I think you're right. Yeah.
And Welgunde, and then I think Brunhilde. Am I right? Dang it. Whenever I hear words that sound similar to other words. Okay.
No, I think you're right about that.
That was a problem with me learning Korean. The words sound almost the same as Japanese, but then I just forget the Japanese and I just start using the anyways.
That's tough.
Yeah, it kills
when
me.
you're learning a lot of languages.
So my next note here is on Branton.
Yes.
He had a scary dream, which you didn't know if it was real or not, but it was a dream where this dark cloud was whispering to him and telling him what to do, and he didn't like it. Don't tell me what to do. But I don't really know. Was this cloud? Is this like the ogre bad guy?
Okay, you're a bit ahead, I think. We're in like two different places.
Because
That's
I've
my
got
next
Heim
note.
Castle here as our next.
Okay, I kind of skipped over some things because I just didn't take notes on everything.
Right. So the Almorica thing, that happens, I think the event triggers after you see Prancet and you go back to Almorica because now you know that they're looking for Dorgallo as legacy, and the Zenobians, the Lodicians both are looking for Brunhildr, and these two things are connected. But after the Brigantes fight, we do meet up with Maruva at the Hagia Bahamuba, and we meet Sherry, the other sister.
Yes.
Who is working for Branton, and she's trying to take her father back to Branton. She's a Bakramese loyalist. And
so she abandoned the order, right? The Liberation Front, and basically went and allied with Branton.
Well, they were all like part of the order, and then Saria left the order to join the Valeria Liberation Front, and Sherry left the order to join with Branton.
Got it.
That's
the religious order of Philha.
Yeah.
Okay.
By the way, I looked it up. It is Woglinde. Why did I? Because Woglinde is the Xenos.
That's Xenos.
That's the other Rhine maiden. Brunhilde, you were right. There is is a goddess in Norse mythology. Ugh.
Okay.
Anyways, back to Tactics Ogre.
So there's a battle here against Sherry and her forces where you rescue Maruva. He asks you not to kill his daughter. What were you going to say, Ivan?
Did you kill her?
I think I did by accident.
who I can't remember. Who we're talking about right
this fight when you run the route again. If you get her down to 10% of her HP, she will leave the fight, and she's the girl you need to recruit by making it rain.
Oh, that's what we had talked about earlier. That's right. Oh, okay. So it's one of the situations where she needs to be. Well, I guess this is a lot of situations. You lower their health to like critical level and they'll flee. But if you hit them too hard and kill them, then they die. One of those situations.
And then when you do this again, you'll have more sisters with you. They all have dialogue with her. So like Olivia is available. She'll have in-battle conversations. Justina will. And even though she's not recruitable at this point in the neutral route, Saria also has dialogue with her. So they're all like trying to get her back. And she explains more of her motivations for why she joined with Branton and why she was up against the sisters. This is where you meet Maruva, and he asks you, all right, I'm going to come with you, but I have to know, are you willing to fight Kachua? And you get the choice. Yes. I can.
Yeah,
or
this is
no,
where
I can never do that.
What does this choice affect exactly? I mean, I know we were supposed to choose no, I can't, but what does it do?
Yes, there is a reason I made you do that. It's to if you say I cannot fight Kachua, you will make Kachua fight you. This will cause her to show up in battle against you later on. If you say I could fight Kachua, she will not show up in battle. And this also affects her recruitment conditions, which you guys are gonna worry about in the next route without me. I'm not telling you anything about that beyond it. But this affects how to get the princess ending.
Okay. So if I'm not mistaken, sorry, just real quick. If I'm not mistaken, the battle where she and Lancelot are fighting us in the castle, she won't be in that fight if we say I can't fight her in this choice with...
If you say that you will do what you must if you had to fight her, if Denim said, like, basically, yeah, I could fight her, you will never fight her. If you say, I could never fight her, you will always fight her.
Oh.
You can still get the good ending from either one of these scenarios. It depends on whether she
survives the fight.
Or she survives the events after the fight if she doesn't fight. So
right, because there's a bunch of different options.
Yeah, there's several different ways to do it, and this choice affects how you do it.
Okay,
wow,
so it's the opposite of what I was saying. If you say I can't fight her, you will fight her. Right. If you say I'll do what I must, she doesn't participate in the fight.
Right.
Correct.
So you should say that, right? If you don't want to end up fighting her, or is it still better to pick I would never fight her and then just not kill her in the battle?
What this choice affects is the choices you will have to make after the battle, which you will, because you didn't, I made sure that this would not be an issue in this route.
Right.
There is a scene that will happen with Kachua if she doesn't participate in the battle or if she survives the battle, and there are multiple choices you have to make, and the outcome of that scene will be dependent on the choices you made in this scene, which it'll mess with you because the right answer changes depending on which of these two choices you made.
That's crazy.
Just remember that for next time you go through chapter 4.
Okay, I'll try to keep that in mind.
It will change considerably how things turn out.
Okay. Well, that's wild.
Sherry has a very interesting line that I believe is echoed again very briefly later on by Branton. And it was all breeding and no substance.
Yes.
Do you remember reading that?
I did read that, and I thought it was, does he mean brooding? Or
Well, but then they say the same thing again
exactly.
later. Branton, I think, says all breeding and no substance. Well, I looked up the Japanese script. And in both cases, the line just doesn't exist. It's inserted.
They just say the other guy is useless. In the old translation,
yes, exactly.
It's like, oh, LaRaz is useless. Oh, Shelley's useless. What they mean is like, oh, useless. They're high class, but they're incompetent.
Yeah. Yeah,
all
so the breeding
you have the blood, but not the means, or not
the actual skill.
You have the genotypes, but not the phenotypes. That's probably it.
Sure, yes. Okay. All right, so you end up bringing Maruva back. He begins advising you. Let's see.
And this is the point where you can now recruit Sherry, by the way. And I'm going to tell you how to do it so that the next time you go through this route, it's not that the game doesn't tell you in any way, but this is how you do it. After you get back to Fida Castle after this battle, where you make your preparations to attack Barnisha, you travel back to Balma Musa, go into training mode. You use 2 of the horns that make it rain. You leave, and then you come back to Balma Musa. This will trigger a scene where Olivia and Denim are walking through the rain. They're trying to hide from downpour. They go into a building, and they find Sherry sitting there with murderous intent. She's blaming Denim for ruining her life and destroying everything, and she's about to stab him to death in front of Olivia. And Denim says, you know what? It's fine. If you want to stab me, just go ahead and do it. And decides she doesn't want to do it, drops the knife. Olivia gives her a hug, and she joins the party.
That's one of the most annoying recruitments in the game, right? Like, there's all these conditions that have to be.
It is one of the most obscure, and it's always been obscure in every version. There is very little that points to where she is and when to find her there. And even in the scene, everything that happens in the scene is kind of by coincidence. They just happen to walk into the right house. But it is good. It kind of sets things up between Olivia and Denim as well.
We'll talk about that.
But next time you're playing through the chapter 4, through the other route, just remember that's an option.
Okay.
She also has dialogue with Branton when you meet him later, so it might be worth doing it for your future runs.
Okay. My next note is Heim Castle. There's a scene with Ozma and Balsaphon arguing about the fact that he lied that Hobrin still lied.
Sorry. Can we were talking about that scene with Branton talking to the Shadow.
Yes, the dream. Yeah.
Just,
So I had that question. Who was the shadow? Is the shadow who I'm thinking of the Ogre
the final
King?
boss.
Is it
Seems
Dalgalua?
silhouette.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You see his silhouette in the corner of the screen if you look carefully in the dark. It is Dorgalua's sprite.
Okay, so Dorgalua is infiltrating people's dreams.
Well, just Branton, and the scene that dream takes place in, it's the second to last area before the final boss. With the Stonehenge things, you actually
the Hanging
fight
Gardens or whatever it is.
Yeah.
under the Hanging Gardens, yes.
Under it, yeah.
So the implication is because of Branton not, he knew that knew all about Kachua, basically. And he knew all about the king's despair, about his wife and everything. He basically made sure that the king would end up down there, and he's now being reminded of it as it's becoming relevant. We'll get to it toward the end, but that's what that scene was setting up. The final boss doesn't actually come out of nowhere. They did set him up here.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, I mean, they did also set up. Well, when do they reveal this? Is it Barbas who reveals that Dorgalua came, like, to the underworld and got trapped there? I think it's right
yeah. Towards the end, I think. Yeah.
Where the Hanging Gardens, you have to read the descriptions of each area. It's incredible how much detail they put into those. And it's actually why it's the only reason why you shouldn't take every shortcut and get to the top as fast as possible. Because those descriptions basically cover the tragedy of the royal family. Like every floor on that in the Hanging Gardens has some relevance to what happened to lead Dorgalua down to where he went. So it covers the death of the prince. And it also covers just background lore. On some floors, it's nothing important happened, but
yeah.
Nice. Okay, now we're at Heim Castle with Ozma and Balsfon, right?
No, we're not, because we killed Ozma at the end of chapter 3 in this round.
Oh, so this is a different
I remember.
route.
Yeah, whatever you're looking at.
About Kachua.
Next scene, we plan an attack on Bernicia Castle, and then we would be going...
Oh, Bernicia, because that's where... Yeah, that's right.
No, Ozma's not dead, right? When did we kill Ozma?
Revenge. They needed revenge, so we killed...
No, seriously, when did that happen?
I do remember doing it, but I can't remember if we talked about it.
Oh,
right.
That was
in
the battle where
revenge.
Lancelot and Kashua killed...
Leonard,
Leonard, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I remember now. So this is a... If she's not killed in that battle, or maybe this is a chaos...
It's law. It's the lawful route. It's
the law... okay.
Yeah,
I see what they did here.
You're in the wrong place.
They've combined all of Chapter 4 into one thing, rather than having them split into their individual routes. So there are probably scenes here...
Incomplete. I was using it as I was following along, because there are certain dialogues in battle that I remember happening that aren't listed in that script.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So I had to go back and actually check for myself. Be careful navigating that.
Okay, so this is a scene you would have seen in the law version of
just leave it aside.
Okay, so
Barnicia Castle.
Yeah, Barnicia
is where we should be now.
And this was something of a surprise. I think Shadow once again comes back to us saying, "Hey, I've been doing my super cool, awesome killer spy stuff, and so this is where you want to be. This is what's happening. There's a small group of people here." And this is when Denim finally says, "All right, we're going to send our whole army to attack, but we need to take what's the word? Take an aside, like a group of some of these troops. A diversion, yeah. And then we're going to go to Bernicia, because they will not be expecting this. And indeed, One-Eyed Lance is completely shocked that this happened.
And even Denim was like surprised that it worked as well as it did.
I know.
They don't seem to know anything about this.
And even as we start killing the Dark Knights on our way to Bernicia, and it was Barbas.
Before we get to Bernicia, we get to meet the Dark Knight Andorras. Just before...
Oh, Andorras. That's right, Andorras.
Yeah.
We meet him on Lazorius Field outside of Barnicia.
Yes.
And
but we wonder how come after... Because we don't kill him here.
No.
He warp stones out.
Yeah, like they all do.
But he doesn't go and tell the other people that we were coming.
That's right.
And so when we show up at the gates, which first of all, if you're at a fortress and you can be safe behind the gates... don't open the gates and bring your whole army out in front of the gates, and then let the people through if they kill you or not. Just stay behind the gates, and they can't kill you, and you can shoot arrows at them and whatever. Okay, so other than that tactical kind of misstep here, I don't blame it because I think the gameplay is really fun, actually. I've been spending more and more time before each battle, just like going through all my characters. But as soon as after we win that battle, it's like, wait, they didn't know we were coming. The Dark Knight that we fought previously warped out and did not tell them. So there's some, what would you call it? Some competing, maybe, I don't want to say allegiances, but yeah,
Yes.
there's some intriguing things happening here within the Dark Knights.
And there is actually a Warren Report article about this called "A Rift Within the Dark Knights." It shows up in every chapter, but you should read it in lawful route because it will unlock certain things.
Cool.
But yes, there is a lot of unease going on with the Dark Knights, and Andorus is really interesting. He is black. He's a Balmocan from a country called Nerdam.
Yes.
So why is he fighting for Lotus?
And he actually has a
were
bunch of
annexed by
dialogue
Lotus,
with
I think.
Yeah.
Canopus.
So
So
Lotus basically took over his kingdom. I think he was royalty or something like that, right? Or part of the royal
prince.
family. Yeah.
Wow.
And so his country was annexed and taken over by Lotus. So therefore he sort of became a part of these Dark Knights, but with the purpose all along to get revenge
Of course.
for his
Well,
family.
is actually a hostage. He's a high-ranking hostage to make sure that the Near-Enemies don't revolt. That's why he's with them, basically. He basically
so
has
then they'll
to
kill him. Jeez.
The Canopus has a bunch of dialogue with him, and a couple of other characters do too, and other routes he's worth paying attention to, because his the story of his country and what happened to their royal family is actually covered in Ogre Battle 64. You actually go
64.
to where he's from.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, so that was good. I'm glad you brought that up with Andorus there, because he escaped the battle but did not warn
Yeah.
Lancelot that we were coming.
So even though he had a forward kind of not necessarily scouts, but something like a forward defensive position before that castle, the purpose of doing that is so that you, when something happens, you then send word back,
Yes.
right? And that didn't happen. It was shocking to Denim, and that's why the plan worked so well.
Right.
So the Dark Knights had a failsafe there. It just didn't work because they put the wrong guy in charge of it.
The wrong guy. Yeah.
Right, and they should have known that. They had other worries, I guess, because they didn't think that Denim would go there in the first place.
Yes.
Right, and it's only because Shadow is such a beast that we were able to have the intelligence necessary to actually go there in the first place.
Right. Okay,
I was really satisfied that Denim was like, "You did a good job, Shadow. Go rest." Totally, it's superfluous, but it does let us know a little bit about the character of Denim, right?
Sure.
Whereas most people would be like, "Keep working, 2 more, keep going, don't stop, don't rest." But Denim
Saria does the same thing for
rest.
that messenger when he tells her about Barbatos being killed. Does the exact same thing. Give him some rations.
Yep.
There you go.
So by the time we do show up at the castle, Lancelot is not expecting that.
Nope.
And he and Barbas have this kind of argument back and forth about how they should proceed.
Whether
Lancelot
they should,
is more or less saying retreat is an option here.
Yes.
We could just leave the Isles altogether.
Yes.
And Barbas is like, what are you talking about? Are you serious? You can't do that. There's a little bit more nuance to that. Maybe you should read some of the lines, but Lancelot's trying to remind him, you remember what our actual goal here is, right? We don't really care about who rules the island or whatever.
Right.
The rule of Valeria is but one step along our path. If we retreat now, our losses would be trivial. The high priest has commanded as much. And then Barbara's like, the high priest, I'd soon see his head on a spike. And the context you gave us last week, Ivan, about the fact that Barbas was saved from being executed by Lancelot, I think comes into play big time here with the conversation. Because Lancelot he's putting up with a lot of insubordination, near insubordination from Barbas here.
And apparently, well, from multiple of the Dark Knights.
Yes.
And I thought they were this cohesive, like tight-knit, elite, like super high-performing, no nonsense kind of group. And the more you learn about them, it's like, this was never going to work.
No.
You guys don't like each other. You don't get along. You don't agree. You aren't going to listen to each other. And this is not at all the Navy SEALs that I thought that we were being presented with.
Yeah. Quick question for Ivan. Is it revealed in a different game or something like that why Lancelot wanted to save Barbas? Like, what was his reason for doing that?
It's
so we
never
don't know.
allowed.
Wow.
But there's a couple of things about the Dark Knights which sets up intrigue for I think future titles that they just never got to. And somebody brought this up in the comments, either here or on Discord, where that the neutral route does not introduce the Dark Knight Volak, who has a slightly expanded role in the lawful route, and has at least one scene with Branton where he is shown to be like the guy who actually deals with Branton on a day-to-day basis for the Dark Knights. And he's a really interesting character who gets very little elaboration because he shares the last name, his Volak Vinsalf, with the current queen of Zenobia and the head general of the Zetigenan Empire, Hikash Vinsalf, which is really strange because he does not seem like a Zenobian at all. And this is never elaborated on either, but it's just a strange coincidence that they set up, I feel like.
Yeah.
And you'll see more stuff from Alzaphon as well. So,
Okay.
anyway.
Anyway, so Lancelot, for whatever reason, I guess we don't know what the reason is, puts up with a lot from Barbas. He seems to be protecting him almost, or he gives him a lot of slack, a lot of leeway to not just express disagreement, but like call him out and insinuate he's a coward and things like this. But Lancelot just kind of puts up with it, like, no, like, you're not thinking clearly. Like, your head's going to be on a spike if you don't take these children seriously.
Yes,
kind of a
he
thing,
calls
right?
them children, yeah.
Like, obviously, Denham is more than just like a child soldier. That he knows what he's doing. They're winning, by the way.
Yes.
So anyway, he takes Cashua inside the castle. You have a fight with Barbas. You defeat him. He shifts stones out.
Yeah, of course.
Go back inside. And this is like, I guess, what you were saying earlier, Ivan, depending on your choice earlier, Cashua will either participate or not in this fight.
Before we head on, I just wanted to bring up Barbas's gun.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That was really funny.
Oh, gosh. And he shoots the soldier in front of him,
like,
right?
Do you see this device?
Oh, my gosh.
This is greater than like any sorcery ever. And he like shoots his own guy and he dies. He's like, get this thing away from me. This thing sucks.
Anyways, what I meant to say was, even though it's a great invention, we will use swords.
Anyway,
except me. I have a hammer. It's so funny. I loved it.
So in the old game, the guy who he gives the gun to, he can't use it, and nobody except the Fusilier class can use the gun. So he would just pistol whip you with it. You use it as a club.
That's one way.
I do want to ask, so I know whether to talk about it. Did you actually did you meet the Fusilier, like the one guy with the gun that you can meet in this game? Did you recruit him?
Well, I don't know. I don't.
There's a scene with him with the Dark Knight Martin that you get a battle with Martin in a separate side quest that I recommend you do the next time you run through it. Okay. That will unlock the Fusilier class and tell you about like the country who makes guns in this world. And this will also let you meet...
That's the country that is about to rule the world, if that's the case.
And then you can also meet Gamp one more time.
The Beastmaster?
Are you talking about the pirate guy?
The Beastmaster with the
griffins? No, not Nap. I'm talking about the guy who you talked about with the gun.
With the gun? It's a fight against Martum in Renvy City.
Yes.
Okay, but the person you recruit,
I'm talking about.
Yeah, you. That's an NPC in that battle that is trying to run away from Martum.
Yeah, I'm asking. He's not the pirate guy, is he?
No.
Okay. So I did not meet this person then at all.
Okay, so just watch out for that on your next run through Chapter 4. There's a good scene with Martum, and it unlocks you a really good class that actually lets you use guns in this game.
Okay. Okay, so you get into the castle, and Well, I guess the choice that we made, she does not participate in the fight. She goes into another room. We end up fighting Lancelot, defeating his.
I thought you guys were gonna fight her. That's the choice I left in the notes.
Yeah, I thought you said you told us to pick not to fight her.
I told you to pick in the options that you choose at the Hajia Bahamuba. When you say you will not fight her, that is the choice that causes her to spawn in the fight.
Okay.
That is what makes you fight her. If you say I cannot fight her, you must fight her. So that's
so it's the opposite thing. Okay.
Gotcha.
Anyways.
Okay.
The point is she didn't die. And I had a scene that came like she wasn't killed in the fight, and I saw the scene that came after that. Were you not wanting us to see that scene at all? Did you want us to kill her in the fight?
That's what I left in the notes, but it's all right if as long as she dies, that's where I wanted you to go with it.
Okay.
Because that scene where you talk to her after the fight is difficult to complete properly. To get her to survive.
Yes, right. Because again, the scene that I saw, she stabs herself and dies. But
yeah.
Okay. So the battle with Lancelot.
Very Matsuno.
She can either be in this fight or not, depending on the choice you made earlier. But whether you kill her in this battle, or whether you end up she doesn't participate, you go into the other room and talk to her. There's a likelihood that she will die either way. She'll either commit suicide, stab herself, or you kill her in the course of the battle. And this leads to the ending in which Denham becomes the king in the end, rather than, I'm guessing, her becoming a ruler. Right.
Yeah, I guess.
Anyway, let's see. Let's pull up some of the
dialogue in this battle is really good. And these are like some of the all-time best Tartaros lines. And these are the ones I was looking up because the script did not have all of them. It had a very partial list.
Oh, really?
But there's a lot.
Either that or they added some lines from the PSP version that were not reflected in the... or they added some lines in the Reborn version that were not reflected in the PSP script.
What were some of your favorite ones that weren't included in the script?
I actually wrote one down, but it'll take me a moment to find it. So if you guys could just start.
Sure. Yeah. So at the start of the battle, which we have right here, Denham of Goliath made the chariot favor the better man. Right. That's right. Start fighting. If you have Hobrim, if you've recruited him, right? I need no eyes to know who stands before me, Tartaros. Lancelot says, Hobrim, the finest swordsman Lothlorien ever produced. I'm glad the loss of your sight has not diminished your skill.
This is the one. That's the one I had written down, and I have a long version of it.
Oh, okay. Our convictions may have been at odds, but I was sorry to lose you all the same. Hobrin says, one of your ability should have been able to find some other way forward, but this, to change so much so quickly, invites suffering. Lancelot says, there was no other way. Lotus needs change. Move too slowly, and the commons would never recognize it for what it was. Our uprising showed them the change that had come, but more importantly, it taught them where to kneel. Hobrim says, "You wield an iron fist when a velvet glove would serve." That's a good line.
Right.
That's a really good
don't
line.
overdo it.
Oh, here's the line that I got. Mm-hmm. There was no other way. We sound well when we speak of a republic, but look at the commons. They are sluggards, dull to an extreme. They are moved to support only that which benefits their fortunes, comfort, and our offspring, and nothing requiring sacrifice. Should we blame the few ignoble nobility who seek to profit from this sorry state of affairs? Hardly. I ask you, who chooses the senators? Who commits laws to parchment? Corruption does not flow downstream. It is a rot that rises from the barrel's bottom. The mob ruled our republic, and the mob leans not toward self-betterment. Our uprising showed them that change had come, but more importantly, it taught them where to kneel. I think republic here, should be Lotus, but generalize it a bit.
I like that
that's
line.
That's a good one.
Coming
right
from the bottom with a barrel. Yeah. That's a really good.
That
line.
actually echoes something that Solzhenitsyn said, which is that it's the people who become corrupt.
Yes.
And then the government takes
and it echoes
reflects that.
Balbator's line from when
So
he executed.
If the government is always lying to you, it could just so happen to be that you've developed a culture where you are okay with lies in general, because nobody else would tolerate it otherwise. Yeah. So it's the fact that the culture, the people, that you've started lying to each other, haven't you?
Really, really good line.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Denham says, your machinations end here, Lancelot. Accept defeat and release my sister. Lancelot says, release her. She's with us of her own accord. And who are you to demand anything of the monarch of Valeria? Denham says, you brought war with you when you came to these islands. Valeria needs you not at all, and my sister needs you even less. Oh? It was none other than the Bakram regent who summoned us here. Your very uncle, Branton Morn. I guess that's been revealed at this point, too.
Yeah.
That Abuna Prancet
and
Branton were brothers, right? Yeah. So this is his uncle. Branton is his uncle. We are not invaders, but mediators. It is you who insists upon war. If you truly wish order for the islands, then you will follow Lotus. Denham says, I have no desire for order born of irons and bonds. Lancelot says, you remind me of another. Yes, he said much the same as you. Talk of freedom. People have the right to live their own lives, was it? Very well, you may share his fate.
And that's Lancelot.
Talking about Lancelot.
He's talking about,
you speak of Lancelot, says Denham. So you keep fighting. Any more lines from that you wanted to talk about, Ivan?
I have some of them mixed in with lines from the lawful route, so I don't really want to read them.
Okay.
I just advise you, when you play through Chapter 4 in other routes, continue paying attention to the dialogue, because you'll see things that you didn't see before.
Okay.
At least.
Well, he doesn't die, right?
No.
He warps away. And this is funny, because we see Barbas again. After he warps out, then Barbas shows up. And he's like, I have no need of cowards. Like, I love it because Barbas, he kind of flips it back on himself. Where it's like, you lost, didn't you? You suck, you're weak, and you're a coward. Yeah. I don't need you anymore.
Yeah. And that's just where Barbas decides he's going to
If Kachua dies in this battle, if she's killed for any reason, Lancelot will immediately warp out and the battle will end. And he will accuse Denham of having killed her. Like, you were her brother and you killed her. And then he warps out.
Yeah.
If you don't kill her and you you get him down to 0 HP, he contemplates killing Kachua himself.
Oh, that's crazy! Wow. There's so many ways this can go. This is so nuts.
This is crazy. Yeah, I've never really played a game quite like this.
Anyway, there's part of me that is thinking maybe we should save the conversation with Kachua for next time. If we had told people before this to pick the choice that leads her to participate in the fight and die.
Oh, I suppose that's probably true.
So what happens if she participates in the fight and then she doesn't die? She survives the fight. Then what happens?
She takes you to a separate room and Denham tries to convince her to come along with him and help him rule Valeria.
More or less the same conversation, just maybe in a little bit different way.
The choices you have to make will be switched on you depending on which decision you made previously. So the correct choice if you didn't fight her will be different from the choice that if you did fight her. Which is why
you mentioned that.
It is like a 25% chance that you will accidentally stumble into the right answer. And sometimes you will come into it and you'll think you have the right answer because you know which one got her killed the last time, and that answer will get her killed this time. It is wow. It is really, really out there. This is why Matsuno did not want a strategy guide released for this game if it wasn't going to be released. If it was going to be released right after the game. It was split into 2 separate volumes with the second half of the game coming out like 6 months after the game, because he did not want anyone to be spoiled on how to navigate that situation and get the good ending.
Crazy. So most people probably saw the sad ending. Even
I definitely
if they
did.
Chose chaos. Or
I remember
whatever,
the first time I went through this game.
Yeah.
This scene is a real kick to the heart. I guess it's pretty hard to take.
I really like this ending though. Like
I do
as far as the theme of the game goes, I think it works really well.
Yeah, totally.
There's a reason I wanted you to get this one and not the other bad ending, which is why I made you do some of the things that are pretty kind of silly, like storming Briganta's castle, telling you to murder Kachua.
Yeah, right. Okay, so let's just save that for next time. That whole conversation with
Yeah.
Kachua. We'll talk about that next week instead.
Okay.
But she dies, essentially, is the result of this, right? So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here because this is a different route.
Yeah. My next note's about just Lancelot. We get to see Holy Knight Lancelot.
Oh, did you see him that early? I didn't see him till later.
No, I just
Yeah,
think I
that
actually
happens,
stopped. I stopped taking notes.
Oh, stop taking
for
notes.
a while.
Okay.
I was actually kind of upset. So I'll be honest. There's a part of I'm not saying much here, and it's in part because I did not want to do this, and my notes reflect this. I became very unhappy that Kachua died, and unhappy at the neutral playthrough just in general, and not really excited about this game. But that all does change at the very end because I am very intrigued with where the game goes and with how it ended.
Yeah.
But at this juncture of the game, I was like, why? I didn't want to do this. I don't like playing games where I have to make decisions that are
against what you
what I would normally do. Yeah. And that has been this whole game so far. Maybe not the whole game, but several parts of the game.
Yeah.
But it picks back up. Don't you worry. So yeah, I don't have a note again until we see Holy Knight Lancelot.
Yeah.
Okay, Holy Knight Lancelot we see after we actually go to Heim and defeat Branton, which is
very
basically
good.
what
Okay.
has temples. He's like, well, we lost Kachua, and this is really, really bad, but we do have him on the ropes, so we might as well keep going.
Yeah, just force it through, and it becomes pretty clear that Denim, you're the guy now.
Yeah,
right?
Maruva basically talks him through this, right? Right yourself, Denim. This is no time for maudlin reflection. Much remains to be done, and swiftly. And Denim's like, what's the point,
Yep.
It's all meaningless without my sister. And he's like, it was fated to be that way. You can't blame yourself. So he peps him up a little bit, right? Calm yourself, Denim. If your men see you waver so, you'll lose your command and then the war. What's done is done. No amount of mourning will raise Kachua from the grave. So he basically pushes him to keep going, So there's a whole bunch of fights leading up to Heim, which is where Lancelot fled to.
And even within Heim, there's like 4?
3, but there's
places.
Yeah, there's like a bunch of maps. It's the first 3-stage castle, though.
Yeah, you can there's a lot.
First 3 stages.
Yeah.
But it's just a 3-stage battle with 2 different sides you can approach it from. So there's different paths that you can take.
Right.
This is the point where you can meet Martum and Lindel and get the guns in this world. When you do it next time. Pretty much every side quest is either triggered before Barnisha or right after Barnisha before you go to Heim. So that's worth taking it up. Then I just like the dialogue at Willem City, I believe it's called. It's right before Heim, where the Swordmaster is like, it's a very hilly city, where it's they're so defeated. They're like, well, Denon's coming and he's about to kill all our families, but and he's gonna kill us, but let's go kill him. Let's go try.
I also liked the one where the soldier was like, I'll look the other way if any of you decide you want to
that's the one.
defect right now. And none of them leave. And he's like, good, awesome, Bakram soldiers are beasts, let's do this kind of a thing. He's glad at least they kept their honor or whatever. So I liked that a lot. But you go through a couple different stages.
Yeah.
And you get to the castle itself where Branton is speaking with Lancelot. Did you have something you want to say before that, Ivan?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a note because when you're fighting Galgastani and you read all their background stories in the Warren Report, you find that they were normal people, but they were also really into exterminating Walisters. They were ultra nationalists. When you read Bakrami's background stories, it's a lot more. They're a lot more chill.
Yeah.
And you kind of feel bad about it because it's a lot of them are like disgraced nobility or people who are like trying their best to get through school, and it's like these are way more normal than the Kagastani villains.
Yeah.
Like,
That's funny.
Dang.
So this scene was really good. I wasn't expecting a lot of what happened here to happen either. So basically, they're like at the gates. They're like just about to storm the castle, and Branton is still holding out. Like, no, keep fighting.
He's trying to tell all the Dark Knights what to do.
Yeah,
he's not being respectful at all, and
No.
it's like he's not in a position to make these demands.
No. And Lancelot's like, yeah, we're just coming to say farewell.
Yep.
Good luck, but
And then
we're out of here.
They teleport out, and he's just like, "What?"
Well,
What?
but this is where Branton had actually gotten to Barbas first, and Barbas betrays Lancelot and
right.
Balsaphon and Andorras. Andorras and
Marm
Barbas.
and Barbas.
Yeah.
turn their swords on Balsaphon and Lancelot
Right.
and take them captive. This was a little bit funny to me. Like they take him into this other room and they set him down there and they're like kicking Balsaphon and stuff. And they take the sword because he had Brynhildar or whatever it's called.
Brynhildar.
Yeah. So Balsaphon was the one holding the sword. So Martum takes it from him and is like, all right, we'll just leave you here. And you're going to get slaughtered by the Almoricans when they come up anyways.
Right.
And then they walk out and they're like, okay. And they just like shed their freaking bonds. Like they just like get out of them and like warp away, I guess. I thought that was a little funny. Like
that's pretty ridiculous.
They didn't.
And that's the last we ever see of them in this ending.
Yeah.
Well, I did have a question about what did I see? Never.
This is the only scenes where Volok is present in the neutral route as well.
Very interesting.
Not the only
Oh
one,
yeah,
but
yeah.
this is-
Because I was wondering who that was. I was like, where did this guy come
Yeah,
from? Like
yeah.
he's the third
Yeah.
guy that's bound with them, and they
that's
all just
why I
like
was mentioning, yeah.
yeah, they all just break their bonds and leave. I just thought that was so funny. Like they didn't set a guard on them. I guess they're all retreating anyways. That's probably why. And two, they really suck at tying people up. Like I don't know. They just like break out of it so easily. But anyway, Barbas then goes back in. Well, we got where we came from, so peace out, Branton. We did what we told you we would do, but now we're going to leave you to fight them. Like, no, you can't do that. Then you have a big fight with Branton. You end up killing him.
Yep. But then we have to keep following Barbas. He's always a step ahead of us.
Barbas had headed to a place called the Hanging Gardens. And he took the sword with him. So the idea is we got to pursue Barbas and stop him from whatever he's going to do with that sword.
Right.
Because that's what Canopus and Lancelot and everyone else had come here for, was to retrieve that sword.
It's the sword of the power of the gods. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, what were we going to say, Ivan?
There's some really good dialogue against Branton here with several different characters. If you have Sherry, she has some. Sorry, it's just difficult to navigate the script, but he has one where he in the old version. This fight is really funny because he has another Vader, like another direct Star Wars reference.
Really?
Join me, then, and we can rule this island as uncle and nephew.
Oh, I love it.
It's great.
He has a much more interesting line where it's like, if you're not born with a silver spoon, you fashion one of steel. That was
yeah.
where he's talking about we both came up from humble origins. We're both in the same social class, and look where we ended up. Look, we're not that different. You did it through war, and I did it through politics, and we're really both exactly the same guy. And why are we even fighting?
Yeah, right.
I loved your brother, he was my brother. I loved your dad, he was my brother,
Yeah, right. Trying to pull out all the stops to avoid the inevitable at this point.
Yep.
He in this, I'm sorry, the one thing that's different in the other version is it's entirely Terror Knights at first, but as you start killing them, in the old version, he would start summoning angel knights as his allies. It just,
Oh wow.
I always thought that was symbolic of something. But,
Well,
it
I mean,
doesn't-
he was of the order of Philhaha, right? So
That's correct.
yeah, he
But
wasn't
it's the
like
Terror Knights first, and then the angels. The Terror Knights are chaotic aligned in that game. They are
Yeah.
basically evil coded, but then he starts summoning angels when he's cornered. It's he prefers brute force to religion, perhaps.
well, there you go.
Very interesting.
So it's only when he's backed into a corner he starts turning to God again, right?
oh,
Yeah.
that's interesting. That's actually there's something there. That's
yeah,
that's
it's like, oh, I relied on my own
Yeah.
strength till the last second, and then I started calling on
and then
God.
oh please help yeah.
Okay, let's see.
Holy Knight Lancelot.
You have to. Oh yeah, let's talk about that scene because that was
That's
crazy.
something that'll stick with me for a long time.
yeah.
Yeah, there's we kind of show up at the place. There's like a maid who's kind of, just working around helping out. She asks us like, "Do you know him?" And we won't say anything. Denham won't. But yeah, Lancelot is just sitting in a chair looking out at the sea, and he can't talk. He's got no faculties left. He has no awareness. And then I think Denham picks up the music box, right? Kind of plays the little jingle there, and it makes him become a little bit lucid, but then he just falls over, and the maid kind of puts him back in the chair, and you really get nothing out of him.
Yeah.
And that's rough to see.
It's tough.
That was crazy.
It's tough. I was not expecting it, and I
Yeah.
assume for anyone who had played Ogre Battle before this,
Yeah.
he was like the lead character of that game, right, Ivan?
I actually have a note about this.
Okay.
I said this. I told you, Mike, about this in the beginning. That the ending, the canonical ending of Ogre Battle, actually kind of spoils a little bit about what happened to Lance here, because in his ending dialogue, he says he was sent on a secret mission from which he never came back, or he was. I think some of the translations are like KIA or MIA, but basically, they sent him to Valeria, and we knew. If you got the world ending of Ogre Battle, that he doesn't come back from that.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, he was a lead character of the last game there's this mystery behind this mission to, somewhere he went and never returned. And this is, now you're seeing what that meant.
Right.
And that's like the worst fate possible. Holy crap.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Frickin' sucks. This guy who we met right at the beginning of the game,
Yep.
So this, who did this to him specifically is kind of left vague, or like what actually happened.
Okay.
But and originally this was the case, but now in the lawful route, just make sure that you recruit Ozma, because a lot of what the Dark Knights are doing will be revealed through that lens.
Okay.
And this particular detail in the story will get some more development from there.
I'll try to do that.
You can recruit both Oz and Ozma in lawful, right?
No, only
just-
Ozma.
Just Ozma. Okay. Can you recruit Oz in any of these?
No.
No. So Oz
Ozma
is
is the
not recruited.
only. Ozma is the only Dark Knight who will join you. The only other one from Lotus that will join you is Hoberim. There is a scene. I'm not sure if there's a scene with Hoberim and Chrysero. I don't know if it was changed from the original version that it doesn't happen unless you have Ozma. But there's generally a scene you will get in the Warren's report which says like, "Is there a Ludician spy in Denham's ranks?" And then if you went to Chrysero, you would have a private conversation with Hoberim where he would reveal that he's actually from Lotus, that he is Balzaphan's brother, and there would be a flashback scene to when Hoberim was young and he had his eyes with him and his father, with Balzaphan coming in and seizing power. And because Hoberim stood with his father and did not support Balzaphan and Lancelot's rebellion, that's why his eyes were gouged out. And apparently his mother was also killed. And so this sets up, like, Balzaphan is probably the more brutal of Tartaros and him. Even though we don't see much of him doing much, we learn from Hoberim basically. He's a scarier guy than he looks.
That's crazy.
All right.
Okay, so from here you just
I'm back to
basically
Hanging Gardens, yeah.
Yeah, I think
One more note before we get to the end is I did have, if you go to the Oelius Divold story of this route,
Oh, yeah.
oh right.
is settled in Palace of the Dead, which is unlockable before you go to Bernicia, but it's an end game final, like extra dungeon that you might not necessarily go to.
Yeah, I don't think I did that.
And it's okay because it's 100 floors. And it's kind of ridiculous to expect, especially.
Oh, right, that. Yes, I definitely did not do that.
The Nybeth kind of disappears from the story, right? That's where he went.
Yeah.
And if you get down to the 5th level of the Palace of the Dead, you will always encounter him on every route. On the neutral route, though, it's a unique encounter because he has further conversations with Oelius. And it's revealed that actually this soul fetch spell that he was talking about, he pulled it off. He actually pulled it off.
Oh.
Oelius is not it is the soul of his wife in the body of his daughter. He snatched up his wife's soul and then put it in in her newborn baby. And that is what's been animating Oelius this whole time.
Holy crap,
that's
freaking crazy.
Oh my gosh.
I don't even know what to think about that.
Wow. So whoa.
Yeah, that's why I thought it would be worth mentioning here.
Certainly, and you can't get that in any of the other routes.
Oh, it has to be in the neutral route because in the other routes, Nybeth is doing something completely different.
Nybeth is a bad person.
Yeah, Nybeth sucks.
But his philosophy is so deep that he justifies it. He's got an easy way to kind of keep doing what he does. Wow,
that's crazy. That's really
there's a lot of dialogue that happens in that fight, but I recommend you look it up. Like Oelius' true identity. There's a video of it on YouTube. I'll probably post it in the Discord. Just so you guys see it for yourselves, because it's missable.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay,
so there's several battles as you head down to the Hanging Gardens and then descend even from there.
And each time, darn it, Barbas got away again. Oh, man, no, he just warped out again. Yeah.
They just keep going further and further down. You fight Andorus. You end up killing him. And this is where he kind of tells
us,
He kind of helps you out a little bit.
Yeah, which I wasn't expecting. I thought that was cool.
It gives you some information you need to know about what they're going to... But you're too late.
Yeah, it doesn't make a difference, yeah.
Anyways, there's a bunch of battles against just kind of like some zombies and stuff.
Yeah.
There's several fights on the way down.
Before we go down So this is where I was talking about, if you read the descriptions of every stage, give you a lot of information about what happened... when the king died, or like what happened to break apart the royal family that caused all of these events to happen.
Right.
And I don't have them on hand, but essentially there is a floor where the king and the queen had a son, and he also had the daughter with Manaflora. Manaflora got exiled, and everyone believed she was dead, and they believed the daughter was dead, and so he thought the son was his heir. His wife. So his son was playing in the Hanging Gardens because this was like the vacation place for the king, of course. And he fell down, like by accident, supposedly. Although, a royal son dies by accident, you always have to ask the question.
Right.
He fell off. He just fell down from a great height and died, which led the queen to kill herself. And then at this point, Norgalua was, what is a man like when that happens to him? And that's relevant to what we're about to...
and then this is where Barbas tells that he tried to appeal to Felhaha, to the gods or whatever, and got no answer, and so then he turns to the dark gods instead.
And this is, what, Nybetha Oelius, I suppose? Just the whole discussion of you appeal to Felhaha.
Yeah.
And Felhaha doesn't. You don't. The answer isn't what you wanted.
Yes.
We'll just put it that way. It's like, hey, can you bring my son back? No, death is a part of life. Okay, who can bring my son back? You? You'll do it? Nybeth or Joker? This is this is Anakin Skywalker's more or less his kind of arc, right? Where it's serving goodness and morality is cool and all, but who's going to bring back the girl that I love that's going to die? You will. I'm on your team, right? And that's more or less what happened to Dorgulia, right? Where he's just like, hey, all of your white magic and your churchy stuff. It's not going to
Doesn't
do what I
serve
want
me anymore.
Yeah, so I need to move on, and he turns to the dark side.
Yep.
He turns to dark magic and necromancy type stuff.
There's something inherent in the blood of Dorgalawa, right? Where they're able to open this portal to
seal.
the ogres.
Well, Kachua would have been able to open it.
Right.
But she's not there, and so they just use the sword to, I guess, brute force open the seal.
So this was something we kind of forgot to bring up earlier. They were accusing Lancelot of this. Where it was like,
using Kachua?
They were like, we had the sword the whole time, and you sent us on this freaking mission to get Kashua. Go ahead, Ivan.
Brunhilde in Ogre Battle is a weapon that you got in the story of that game, and it has a plot relevance in that game as well. It could anyway, if you get the good ending or if you get one of the bad endings. Its power is basically it opens up the Chaos Gates, which are like the portals to the Netherworld where the ogres were sealed. And they're all over the world. There's a bunch of them in Zenobia, there's a bunch of them in Lotus, and during the course of Ogre Battle, in order to get the good ending, you have to actually find all of these Chaos Gates and interact with them. I forget in what way. You can also use Brunhilde to give it to the devil, and then he'll align with you, and then you get the bad ending where the devil possesses you when you're the king. But basically, this is a power that Brunhilde has in Ogre Battle as well. It has the power to open up Chaos Gates, which is where you are standing at this point.
But Dorgalawa was able to do it just because he has some kind of power in his, heritage, in his lineage or something like that?
The gods, you can make a pact with them and they'll open up to you. There's a couple of different ways to open them other than Brunhilde. So, yeah.
Yeah. So this is, Kashua is one key, but Brynhildr is the other.
Yeah.
And so anyways, I think it was Mardim or somebody who was pissed at Lancelot for why were you making us jump through all these hoops with Kashua when we had Brynhildr.
Well, I'll bet you he wanted to keep Brynhildr's secret, and then let's use Kachua and then do away with her and pretend Brynhildr's lost. Meanwhile, he has it the whole time.
Right.
There could be some subterfuge there.
That kind of thing. Exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway,
this is where we learn about the Ogre Battle, because finally Barbas is able to... They get all the way to that Stonehenge kind of monument.
Yes.
And it's now what? And neither of them know what to expect. They're like, okay, we said the incantation and nothing's happened, right? And we basically kill them all. And then the Stonehenge gate kind of opens, right?
Yes.
After we kill Barbas and everybody. And it's okay, great. Now we're going to see what's happening with all of this. And of course, at this point, we'd kind of heard, oh, by the way, Dorgalawa kind of turned to the dark side and all that stuff. And then we get to see him. He kind of rises up. I am a god. It's how he introduces himself. It's pretty epic, but he looks jacked. He's got one horn growing out of one side of his head, and he just does not look right at all. But he feels like he has surpassed kingship and went straight to godhood. You
know what was really interesting? I think probably the most interesting line of all of the stuff here right at the end with the final boss was he claims to be a god.
Yeah.
But Denham calls him an ogre.
Yes.
And he sort of falters for a second.
And there's a voice.
And there's another voice that tells him, don't listen to him.
Yeah.
I wanted to get some clarification on that from you, Ivan.
That's the spirit.
That voice, what was that voice? And is it true that Dorgalawa was just an ogre, not a god himself?
He is more of an ogre and not a god. That is correct. Okay. Basically, he... This is leaning a bit on some context from Ogre Battle 64, but he also does look like one of the ogres in that game, because you meet them as well. There are gods in the underworld that are trying to get out.
Yeah, when they kind of tell the story of the Ogre Battle here a little bit, where it's hey, long ago, there's a battle, and basically the evil gods sided with the ogres, and then the good gods, because they won, and the winners write history, right. The good gods sided with the humans, and the humans won, and Denham kind of runs over that, I think, a little bit. He's it's a kid's story.
Everybody knows that story.
Everyone knows. Yeah. Well, what if I were to tell you that the legend is true? What? No way! So, obviously, that happens. But it almost sounds a bit like some like Genesis giants, like
Oh, sure.
Nephilim, Book
Yeah.
of Enoch kind of stuff, where the fallen angels, the fallen gods, kind of, take what would you call? They create monstrosities among the the children of men and all that kind of stuff, and then God has to kind of like fix it. It's interesting kind of stuff there because you can see it with this voice that whispers to him. It's not just him; he is possessed by a spirit, right? There was a fallen angel came and through possession of him created like a new being, which is like basically the story of the Nephilim. And the ogres are kind of giants, right? And anyways, I kind of see where Matsuno might be going a little bit with that. But it's interesting to note that these spirits are trapped underground, right? But they were never necessarily done away with, right? They're still there, and they're always gonna be there, and they're always going to be trying to get out.
Yeah.
Is
Right.
the way that I can kind of see it.
Right. And so this is Dorgalawa's chance.
Yep.
You have to end up fighting him in 2 phases.
Yeah.
First
Then
phase,
the
and then-
giant where he's like super tall.
Yeah, then you're
He
like all
makes a
surrounding him.
doppelganger.
Yeah, the
Oh, yeah, the
doppelganger one was
doppelgangers, yep.
interesting
Yep, that was cool.
because however select your party carefully on that one.
Yeah.
You can make it really cheesy with specific, like you if you know that's coming, you could really plan around it. It can mess with you too.
Yeah. I did not, but
there are
yeah,
ways to beat it. There are not like frustrating. If you just think
I'm
about
sure
the
you
team
can. Yeah, I can just think of the ways to do it. But finally, kill Dorgaliwe. He's not a god. Spoiler alert.
Yep.
He's just a stupid ogre, and he dies. and that's more or less the end of that. We get to kind of see the endings now. And
Well,
Well,
when he's dying,
When Warren
Oh,
comes
that's
in
right.
and saves
Warren-
everybody. Yeah.
because everything's earthquaking and it's all going to collapse. And Warren shows up and he warps everybody out except for Denim at first.
Yep.
And I was like, "Okay, what's going on here?" Because you don't know who to trust in this game.
Yeah,
You just
exactly.
don't know. And Warren, he said he told us the truth, but was I guess Brynhilde does exist, or Brynhilder, so he was at least not completely lying. But that doesn't mean that everything he says is true. It doesn't mean he's a good guy either. I was fully expecting him to be like, "Haha, my plan," but instead he warps us out and seems to be incapable of warping himself out, even though everyone else in the game can always do that. But yeah,
He
when
he
people
forgot his shift stone.
exactly, he just oh dang it, he screwed up.
Or
but I think they're
with
implying
whatever
that he just
magic
died there.
that he's using, he has to kind of like seal the gate again or whatever.
Yeah.
And he has to stay behind his sacrifice. to
So
do
and
that.
that's whenever you seal a gate, there's always someone who has to stay behind. This is
sacrifice.
a trope.
which is
Sacrifice.
So yeah, he's there, and then what happened to him? We don't know, but like we kind of know he's probably dead.
Coda 3. Coda.
Well, I didn't say he is dead. I'm saying he's probably dead, and we don't need to go into post-game spoiler territory.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, what was I going to say there? Well,
His ending in
okay.
Ogre Battle also implies he's dead, by the way, just like Lance's. But Canopus's did not.
oh,
Canopus's
okay.
says he meets his best friend again in Heim. And where does the game end? It's in Heim.
In home.
Interesting.
Okay. So yeah, let's
We're basically
let's
at the
talk
ending
about,
cutscene now.
Let's talk about the ending here. I loved it. I thought it was really good.
I really did. It got me to like re-enjoy the game, and it really got the wheels spinning in my head as to what are the other endings. I'll bet you they're really good. and this one was good. I like this one. There's a few lines from Denim, and just the way everything happens. It's very unexpected. We got slightly different endings, I think, but I got the one where Denim is assassinated.
Yeah, I did too.
Oh, you did too. Okay, I thought you were talking about the other one. And the way that happens, and it just cuts to black, and it's like game over. Like you don't even know whether or not Denim truly succumbed to, or if the guy missed or whatever. It's just the guy shows up, shoots, and it's like boom, black. Like the credits, roll the credits.
over.
Now. And it's crazy the way that'll happen. But of course, before that, we're at the coronation, but Denim is still like reflecting on the past and what's his name, the guy, the old guy.
Maruva.
Yes, Maruva. He's telling us like, hey, don't worry about it, everything will be fine. he's dealing with all sorts of, he keeps getting messages from different people, and he's trying to like figure out what to do. He's more or less taking like an advisor position over like a Merlin kind of position, whereas we're the king, but he's the one, clearly he's kind of like trying to figure out the logistics of all this stuff.
Right.
And he's like, oh, we'll deal with that after the coronation. Just get the crown on first, and then we got work to do, basically.
Yeah.
Like, it's not over.
No, it's and that I loved that whole feeling.
So good.
The whole feeling of like anxiety that like it's not over.
Yeah.
If you have both Saria and Sistina, they will have a scene here where they talk about a terrorist group called the Burnham Tigers raiding
the Tigers.
Yeah.
They assassinated somebody, right? Like
they've been going around doing Liberation Front stuff, basically against Denham.
Yeah.
And then we get to see just all of his regrets, just like, and you just say Kachua ... And then you see all the scenes where we're just like telling Kachua that like we're not going to listen to her.
This was, I really feel like this ending, because this ending has two slight variations, like we said, and then there's a totally different one. But this entire thing, I think, basically either way it goes in the post-credit scene. We got the one where Denham is assassinated, but there's a different post-credit scene too. Either one, because I've seen them both. This ending is my favorite, I think, for many reasons. But I okay, let me just kind of go through it. So I guess what you expect. I was watching somebody's reaction online to this ending.
Okay.
And it's particularly the part where he actually gets shot, and it just goes to black. And
my heart kind of like skipped for a second there. Yeah. I was not expecting it.
And he's just like, what the F? Like, you can't just end a game like that.
Dude,
and I
was
like,
a
no,
great ending.
No, that's actually a perfect way to end it.
For what happened, especially throughout this playthrough.
Yes.
That's the most logical ending.
It is brilliant thematically.
Yeah.
Because
it's a cycle.
What you're expecting, and that's what a player or a consumer of the product Tactics Ogre is expecting, because that's the archetypal way the hero rises in the end, and everything ends up good, and you get a happy ending, and they live happily ever after, or whatever. That's more what you're expecting. That's what would satisfy you, this consumer of the product Tactics Ogre. But it's not the reality of how conflicts are resolved, which is what his whole point of making this game was.
Yes.
No, the whole feeling in the end of this cutscene here is, gosh, this conflict's going to keep going on. But for right now, let's just put a pause on it. Let's just get him coronated, and then we can continue the fight later.
Even that does not go as planned.
And the hero's journey ends with a very sudden cut to black.
That's right. Yeah.
Like, we're putting ourselves into the role of Denham, who is regretting all of these choices he made. I love how the first flashback is to Kashua saying, like, please don't get involved in this.
The very beginning. Yeah, that's
like,
right.
Just don't even do it. It's not, like, I can't bear to lose you. She talks about she doesn't want him to die and all this stuff. She was trying to pull him back from involving himself, from trying to be a hero in all of this.
Yeah.
And in his first kind of acts in the story, he became the hero of Goliath and got caught up in that.
Yep.
Right?
He should have, once he did his thing, he should have, and seen the landscape, he should have stepped on back and said, okay, I don't need to keep doing this.
Beginning of chapter 2, Chaos, she asks him to leave Valeria with him.
Right, yeah.
And he's like, no, we have to save our avenge our father.
Our father,
we have to do all of this stuff, right?
Yep.
He's looking back on all of this and realizing she tried to not allow him to be involved in it from the beginning. Right. And because he chose to do that, she's dead, Vice is dead, all of these other people, like thousands and thousands of innocents.
Yeah.
And he's saying, he doesn't think he did the right thing, and he's questioning himself.
Yeah.
And then he's sitting on the throne.
Maruva keeps saying, don't think about it. Don't think about this. Stop reflecting. Just go do it. There's work to be done.
Yeah. And then if we're again in the position of the hero for this hero's journey, so to speak, it just ends in this incredibly abrupt, unforeseen assassination.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And like, that's what you can expect to happen if you get involved in this, I'll call it Game of Thrones.
That's
like,
good. Yeah.
And that's kind of what that whole book series, Song of Ice and Fire, sort of demonstrates too. It's like, this doesn't end well, no matter what your good intentions were, or how noble your intentions were. I think there was a line somewhere earlier in the game that said almost precisely that. No matter how noble your intentions are, like, it's the people who suffer, and they will resent you.
Yes, they'll blame you for it. Yeah,
and that's, I mean, exactly what ended up happening. And I thought it was a brilliant ending for tying up all of what Matsuno, in the interviews we read, kind of said he was wanting to demonstrate.
Yeah,
I think it's brilliantly sort of punctuated, and really regardless of the post-credit scene, because they both insinuate almost the same ends, just maybe one's more delayed than the other.
Yeah, sure.
But in particular, the assassination ending, I thought was amazing.
I liked it, and it at least put me to the point, and I think this is it, because I mentioned before how when Kachua becomes an unalive person, I was kind of, I became once again deflated, right? I just like, great, okay, finish this stupid game. And but by the time I get to the end here and that happens, part of me is just like, Denim deserved that, first of all.
Yeah.
Denim deserved that. And I'm glad that things didn't end well after making those choices.
Yeah.
Right? And he says a line too. Denim says, "We must sever the chains of time and break with the past." He gives this glorious speech at his coronation about how, don't let the past, drive you. That's all that he was doing, right? That's kind of, the concept of, well, this is actually a bit different, but like the idea of pulling up the ladders, right? However you got to power, once you're in power, you pull up the ladders so that no one else can get to where you're at, right? So it's like, oh, okay, I got here by doing all this stuff, but okay, it stops now, right? And I thought this was a very fitting ending for somebody who was motivated the way he was by revenge and was willing to do all of this stuff and rejoin with his enemies and all this stuff just to get to this point and then just die right away. And it's just like, what a fitting end for somebody like that. He was a good person at heart. I was Denim. I saw all the things. They were hard decisions. Fine, I get all of that. But when he gets up there and he starts telling everybody, okay, guys, now I know how to fix this. Don't do anything I did.
Yeah.
Break the chains of the past, right? And that's good advice, right? It is good advice. But of course, somebody who is holding on to those chains of the past, as Nietzsche would call it, with that slave mentality, shows up and just kills him because you're my oppressor.
And that's why I think it's so great, because you start in the perspective of Denim and the kids who had survived this massacre, and they've got this vengeance on their mind, and they feel justified in pursuing that.
Yeah.
Well, who is this person?
I was just about to bring that up.
Jumped out and shot him. What was it that happened that made him feel he deserved vengeance on Denim?
Well, we probably killed his father.
This comes back to my whole point. He would have felt justified in that, and maybe he was. Because Denim's had to make a ton of bad decisions, tough decisions. Go ahead, Ivan.
So the identification of the soldier who kills you, it will tell you the clan he's from, and the clan is dependent on who you have the lowest reputation with at the end of the game.
Sure. So it's almost guaranteed people that we have killed.
Somebody who you made the most mad is always going to be the one.
The people we killed the most, their descendants are the ones that are like. And you know what's funny? You could almost make a whole game around that person's story.
Yeah.
How Denim showed up, killed his father, and he's been seeking revenge. And here he finally gets to assassinate the Duke. And there's a way you can tell that story where he's the good guy.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right? He's
That's
perfectly
my
justified.
Point. It's a bookend almost, but it's a completion of a cycle.
Yep.
And the start of a new one.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all getting to here.
And the cycle doesn't end.
This pursuit of vengeance, this resolution that we typically see for conflicts, is cyclical, and it never freaking ends. It will not stop.
Right.
And I just think it's brilliantly put and punctuated with that hard cut to black, shocking sort of like not expecting it.
I loved it. And they don't show you what happens after. It's just boom, the gunshot, and then it's over. I forgot there were even guns in this game, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, whoa. And yeah, it's just wild. And they don't like lay into it too much. They just show it. It's just shocking, and then the game's over. Done. Yeah. And that was so good. I couldn't believe it. That put a smile on my face. As horrific as that was, after it happened, I was like, well done.
Yeah.
Like, well done. Well done.
Really
and it got me re-excited again after being earlier deflated. It reinvigorated me to now go and see all the other endings. Because I know what Matsuno's doing now. I totally get it now. He's painting us a picture of what it's like to, be involved in forcing other people to do what you want. Yeah. Because that's politics, right? Yeah. Being in charge of the gun that says, okay, now I'm in charge, and that whole Game of Thrones that you're talking about. Yeah. This is that game. And there is not a very pretty way to do it. Yeah. Because it is inherently a screwed up thing to begin with. Violent and horrific.
And innocents, many, by the thousands, will suffer. There are no heroes. You don't come out of this feeling like I did the right thing and I was a hero.
Right.
You don't come out of leading in wartime feeling that way.
Right.
Because it requires that you do things that you would have condemned yourself for at the beginning.
And that's why Maruva is like, don't think about it. Stop reflecting on the past. Just move forward. Yeah. Because no one can get to this point unless they do that. Yeah. Because if at any point you stop and reflect, like, you're not going to make it. Yeah.
Good stuff.
Really good. I look forward to talking about all the other endings now and re-dissecting this game. I'm excited. I love it.
Ivan, since you will not be joining us here for the next couple of weeks as you are involved in studying and doing other things, working and whatnot, what would you like to say before we have you on again near the end of this series?
Well, I first of all just thank you guys for letting me come on. That was really nice. I'll be happy to come on again in the future. Especially as you get toward the end of this podcast, because you're going to go back to the other routes. And I want to thank your audience for bearing with me, because I know I kind of took away some of the production value of your show by coming in digitally. But I think you guys got exactly what I wanted you to get out of taking this route first. Because I know, Kaysen, you said you were hating picking choices that you didn't want to pick.
I know, but that's this whole game. I just have to get over it.
Right. No. That's the thing, though, is I made you go through a route that when you're thinking about a JRPG, you were not going to go this route, no matter what.
Right. Yeah. But you know what? Hold on, real quick. When I think about this game, though, is the route that I want, that I think is like, oh, I'll make the right choices next time and I'll play it the way I would do it. Is that going to be just as screwed up as this route? Because like things aren't going to work out. Like I have this idea in my head where no, I can work this out well. If I make the decisions I want to, then I'll enjoy the story more. But that's not what Matsuno did here. He's not making a story that you just sit back and enjoy and then laugh. I did laugh at the end, I guess, but
because he was clever.
Yes. But I even if I did everything the way I want to, it's still probably going to end up in this like ridiculous, awful situation that's going to hurt my heart again. Yeah. Right? Because that's the nature of this game.
That's true. But it's also, the way that you would have approached this route, I feel like you would have not been, since you would have been seeing it for the first time, it would have felt tiring to you. When you're going through the neutral route last, that would have been the worst thing you would have been on yourself. Okay. So you got through the hard part. Now the game is going to get super easy.
Well, I'm excited. I have to say, Ivan, I am extremely glad that we invited you on and that you have been very helpful, and that this podcast would have been a lot rougher if you were not here. Yeah. And I want to make sure you know that, but I also want to make sure that everybody else watching knows that. This would have been rough, you guys. And I'm glad that we were able to kind of be shepherded in and promised that it's going to work out in ways that we don't foresee, because this really ended up being a wonderful experience. Yeah. And this could have easily been a game that Mike and I just kind of were not happy to talk about for many episodes instead of just that one.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, well,
Yes.
that's the thing. I've been following your guys' work since like the Xenogears podcast. I kind of have a good idea of how you approach things, and I
Good.
saw this game winning the poll, and I knew that this was going to cause a lot of trouble if you guys went into this with neither of you having played it, because there is a specific approach that you need to take in order to really appreciate it and get over the awkwardness of some elements of it. You do kind of have to approach this game in a way that's a bit non-linear, and that's just the way it is.
Right, and that's the hard part. But I'm glad you were here, so I appreciate it, Ivan.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Some notes that you for you guys on your next playthroughs. There's a bunch of stuff in Chapter 4 that we just barely glossed over, and that's totally
Do it all.
fine. I'm saying like there are scenes with the Dark Knights that get developed more. There are characters you can recruit, and I can't explain all of it to you. And the podcast would go on for like months if we did. So just use a guide, please.
Okay.
You will not figure out how to recruit Ravnus if you're just playing through the game. You will just not do it. So
It's one of those games.
look up Ravnus in the Chaos route. Look up how to recruit Cressida. I know it's like spoilers or whatever, but you're just going to have a much better time if you know what's coming up ahead of you. And I think some of these recruitments...
Well, now that we've got it through and we more or less see where the game's going and how it works and what the ending is pointing towards, I don't think I mind spoilers as much. But we still will not be doing them in this podcast. We'll still only talk about the one thing at a time.
Yeah.
But maybe it's not such a big deal after you've already beat the game once.
Yeah.
Yeah, this route does not have a whole lot of extras. You actually can't even start the DLC content from your position right now, which is another reason. Just because you don't have characters who are required to trigger it, and Kacho is one of them, and there is So
okay, cool.
All right.
So you've only scratched the surface of this game, and as you go through the other routes, I think you'll find different ways to interpret what you just went through. So,
Cool.
I'm just happy to help, and I do hope to come back here and cover, wherever you guys get to toward the end for the last one. We can talk about the codas and everything else, but I do need to study for the bar exam. Something fierce. I can't keep up with the game.
Yeah, good luck, dude. Good luck, man. Next time we talk to you, you will be a lawyer, Ivan, whatever the word is, attorney.
Attorney at law.
Well, hopefully before that, but sure, yeah.
I don't know how the bar works. All right. Well, thank you very much.
All right, see you guys.
Okay. Well, everybody, for next week, like we said,
Chaos.
join us to cover the Chaos route. We'll be mostly talking about Chapter 3 differences, because 2 is more or less the same.
Yeah.
And then maybe some things we missed in 4. But that's planned. So see you next week. Peace out.